I'm Wade Sankey. This is the Sankey Rodeo Show podcast from the cabin right here on the ranch in Sankey, America. It's not going to get any better than that. You just will go. Today, Billy Kraft, Sheridan YO Rodeo Board Emeritus.
Yes, sir.
And Craftco Medals.
Yes,
and
sir.
You've lived
Emeritus.
and lived a pretty cool life.
It's been a good life.
Yeah.
I was born naked a long time ago, and anyway, I grew up as a farm kid, and I didn't realize it at the time, but as we got older, my folks, and due to weather and different things, fell on some pretty hard times, and didn't realize it till later. But we were dirt poor, and but we had a good life. We grew up on a farm, and we didn't go to town, and worked our tails off. Grandparents right there. Family was what we had, and we didn't see anybody but really some uncles and grandparents all summer. When school got out, you didn't see anybody till school started again. But it was good.
Where was it?
Manderson, Wyoming. Nobody lived there, but there was 52 farm kids who went to school there. And those 52 kids came from Hyattville and Manderson. They had to consolidate two towns to get 52 kids.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't really a country school, but it wasn't a grand stride away from a country school to get to what it was in Manderson.
Yeah, what would the difference be if that doesn't qualify?
Well, I think like the one-room schoolhouse somewhere. Like there's still a few of those around.
Mm-hmm.
They closed one over by Bernie not all that long ago that was part of the Sheridan deal, but it was out north of town a ways. But it was a one-room school, and they had kids from like first grade to sixth grade, I think, in them. One teacher. That I would think that would be country. In my mind a country school. Yeah. So just a small rural school district. And the people that lived in town were the school teachers.
Yeah.
And that's about who lived there. And my brother and I were talking. We went to the steer open finals, and we were talking. Somebody said, well, did you play baseball? He said, no, town kids played baseball.
we had a job.
Yeah. And we did. I mean, and it was, try to explain to my family how it was growing up, and we worked. And we were no different than any other kids, though. It wasn't like we were special or singled out or abused because we did. Everybody I knew did the same damn thing. I mean, when you got old enough, you were working. And when you got a little bit older, you were working full time.
Mm-hmm.
And, but, I remember as a 5-year-old, my dad farmed beets. And back in those days, they would pick the beets after the beet digging was done. There'd be a few that got missed, fallen, and I mean they went out and scrounged them up and hauled them in. Every ounce was important, and he'd put a truck in gear, stand you on the seat, and point it towards the other end and say, "Keep it going straight." And when he'd get to the end, he'd get in, turn it around, point it the other direction, and that's kind of how we started. And then by the time you were 6 or 7, you were raking hay and rolling beets and driving a little bit all over the place where you weren't supposed to be. And, I think of how my brother and I were laughing about this when we were gone too. And like Dad he'd kind of show you what he needed done, but there wasn't much guidance or anything. It was this does this and that does that, and this is what you do with it.
And consequences.
Well, but he didn't really talk about the consequences. You figured those out on your own.
Yeah, exactly.
Like he didn't tell you that if you turn too sharp under that hay rake, the lugs on that tire will pick that hay rake up and pull it right up over the top of you.
Yeah.
And you learn to think pretty quick when the first time that happens, and you hear that pump, 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 and look back and that sucker's coming for you. And you'd best figure out how to get her shut down and then backed out from underneath it so you can get it set back down on the ground. And you only do that about twice. and And then you don't turn it the wrong direction either. But he never spent any time talking about that kind of stuff. Just sort of figured that out.
How many kids was there, and where did you fall?
I was the oldest of 9.
Oh.
And I've got 3 sisters. One of them has passed away, and 2 brothers. No, 6 sisters. And
yeah,
2
your
brothers.
math's not mathing very good.
No, I grad school of Anderson. No, I have 6 sisters and 2 brothers.
Yeah.
And I'm the oldest, and it had some advantages and some disadvantages. And as a parent, I think you can appreciate now. I know I can, having raised some, and then watching our kids raise their grandkids. But the first one you're kind of nervous about, and you kind of keep them hammed in. And the second one, you figure, hell, that first one did pretty good. And by the time the third one hits the ground, you realize you can't kill them. They just, I mean, and it took me forever to figure out why. You take a cow or a mare, and everything she throws it's alike. Their dispositions, everything. And I could never understand how you could breed livestock like that, but you couldn't breed people. Well, that mare raises them all the same way. That cow raises them all the same way. She doesn't say, oh, hell, that's number 3, you can't kill him. No, they got the same rules and the same structure. That's why they're the same. And we don't do that as humans. So, yeah, you were maybe more restricted than you wanted to be at times, but also being the oldest, I got to do a lot of things as far as working a lot younger than anybody else did because Dad needed the help, and you were just kind of forced into it. But for me, I liked it.
Yeah.
It was good. I was a man.
Yeah.
I was a little bitty one, but I was a man. And the only compliment my dad ever paid me, Wade, was I was probably 13 years old. And my dad had a hired man that everybody wanted. This guy was the best. He got more done and everything else. And we were working some really tough ground. And anyway, I ended up with the job of trying to break that sod up. And my dad told me, he said, I'll tell you something. He said, you get more work done in a day than Bud can. And I thought, I'm 13 years old. And he's a man, So from that point on, I was a man. Mm-hmm. Expected to be treated like one, and pretty much was, till you got to school or someplace, and then they didn't look at you quite the same, which caused a little friction here and there. But I had a good life, good childhood. My dad ended up losing the farm, got hailed out 4 years in a row, bought a farm, never fired a combine for 4 years.
Oh, boy.
We just disc it in, water it, and sell it for pasture.
Not a lot of crop insurance back then.
No, there wasn't any. And when the beets get hailed, they quit growing until they replace their tops. And then and the worst part is they get bruised and they get maggots in them. And so the beets weren't any good, grain wasn't any good, and he lost it. And I didn't appreciate that situation then either. And my dad and I had a relationship that was more like he was my boss, and I looked at myself not as an employee so much as a partner, because we were working. You didn't get paid anything, but you were working towards what you knew was coming. And when it was gone, it was gone. And Dad didn't know how to be my dad, and I damn sure didn't know how to be his kid. And there was a little friction.
Yeah.
And anyway, he was picking up some day work here and there, and I went to work. I was after school and weekends for a friend of my dad's that lived about 5 or 6 miles down the road, and I'd go down there, and I was just doing what you do in the spring. I mean, hauling some hay, and it was too early to start farming, but he kept me busy, and Dad was working for a sheep outfit the other direction, up to Norwood, and he took me up there one weekend, and I don't know if it was good or bad, but I ended up, the guy said, well, you just come up here and live. And so I was about a week after I turned 16, I left home, and moved up there and lived in a sheep wagon behind their house. Nice house, had a light bulb in each room, no running water, one pot-bellied stove in there somewhere that kind of heated the place, and the kitchen stove. But this old kid was a coyote. I mean, he was a crooked son of a buck. But I learned a lot about life there. And I was there for the better part. I lived there 2 different times with a break in the middle, and I don't remember a lot about the break. But I was there for the better part of about 2.5 years. And I hadn't been there very long, and I was asleep, and I didn't have a watch or anything. And he comes in the wagon there, and he says, "Get up. Get up. We just went to bed." So I just rolled back over and went back to sleep. Well, he comes back in a few more minutes, and he's got a little different disposition. He said, "I told you to get your ass up, get dressed, and get in the pickup." I said, "What?" I said, "It's the middle of the freaking night. I don't know what time it is, but I know it ain't time to get up." I said, "Get up." So we get up, I get in the pickup, and I'm a 16-year-old kid, and he takes off, and I just fall asleep in the corner. And we drive for a ways, and I don't know how long we've driven. Later, I figured out we probably drove about 15, 18 miles, and he's thumping me in the chest, waking me up. He said, "Open the gate." And I kind of, half asleep. I'm trying to figure out where the hell we are. I've seen this gate, but I can't put my finger on it. So we pull through this gate, and he'd made a deal with another one of his neighbors. They leased this pasture ground. There was a lot of it, both sheep people. And the guy that I worked for and lived with, he lambed 10,000 head of ewes. He had a lot of sheep. And this other guy might have had 5,000 or 6,000 head, not quite as many. But the deal was that they would go in on this pasture, but the other guy had to buy all his bucks from the guy I was working for. And I'm not going to say any names, but so we were shipping a straight truckload to get 35 to 38 head of bucks in a straight truck. About every week we were hauling a load, we weren't shipping them, we were hauling them over and kicking them out over there. And the deal at night, we would go over and steal a few back because we could put about 7 in a pickup.
It makes them worth twice as much.
Yes, it does. And it's a hell of a deal for everybody involved except the old kid on the other end. So this goes on. I mean, every week we go steal a load back and haul a load over and steal 7 or 8 back and whatever we can get in that pickup. My job is I'm the hooker. So he's got a pickup and he's got one of those old Omaha standard wooden stock racks that folds down to the outside so it's the same height as the cab of a pickup, or you can stand it up and put a cow or horse in it, if whatever,
Mm-hmm.
But it just sets in the stake pockets. And there's no bolt or anything in there. There's no need for that. And so you stand on a bumper, hook your left arm over the side of that stock rack, and you got a sheep hook. And then he's driving around out there till he finds a buck, and then he builds to him, and you're in hot pursuit. And your job is to get that sucker by the hind leg, and then hop off and wait, and then holler at him until he knows you got one, and then he'll go turn around, come back, and you load him in the pickup, go get another one.
Just like Atari with John Wayne.
It's a hell of a deal. So one night we're over there, and he's got up a little more speed than normal, but he drops down across a wash, and at the bottom of this wash it was kind of a flat, smooth deal, and probably had about 6 or 8 inches of little cut bank on either side, and was pretty flat, but about 10 feet across. So he's building to that, and I'm concentrating on this damn buck, and he drops that sucker in there and hits the other side. Well, that stock rack jumps up about this high out of those stake pockets, and me and the stock rack and my hook, we stay there. And he just goes up over the hill and just keeps going, I just sit there. I mean, nowhere to go. He will be back. And eventually he comes, you can see the headlights coming back through the sagebrush, kind of zigzagging back and forth. Down, "What the hell are you doing?" I said, "I'm just sitting there waiting, just sitting here guarding this stock rack, And I said, this is really freaking stupid. I'm not very old, but this is not the greatest idea we ever had. Well, that's how we're doing it. And that's what we did. And yeah, I learned a lot.
Did he ever get caught?
I don't think he did. He moved fairly frequently. Mm-hmm. His dad was something else. When the second year I was there, his dad took his calf crop to town, sold it through the auction barn in Worland. And the guy I worked for was a junior. So he was Tom Black Jr. or Tom Black, that's a made up name, but that's the way the deal was. Well, they both sent a lot of livestock through that sale ring. Well, when they wrote and mailed the check, they just put Tom Black. But they got the guy that I worked for's address instead of his dad that lived in Tensleep. He got the check.
Also fairly profitable.
Yeah. I mean, he just endorsed that puppy and put her in the bank. Mm-hmm. And I've often wondered, I never had any problem just asking people stuff. Maybe I should have had maybe a little more discretion, but I asked him one time, I said, how do you live with yourself? And he said, what do you mean? I said, you took your dad's calf crop. He said, they sent me the check. I said, but it wasn't yours, and you knew it wasn't yours. He said, let me tell you about my dad. He said, you've been to his place? And I said, yeah, many times. He said, that big old barn he's got, and it had the traditional barn roof that came down and dipped off and gets pretty steep down on the shoulders, and then that little lip at the bottom. He said, I was 6 years old, and somehow I ended up out on the roof of that barn, and I couldn't get down. And he said he drove in the yard, and I was kind of clinging to the bottom edge of that. And I was hollering, and he came over, and this old Norwegian guy, he said, what you need? And he said, I'm stuck. He said, you just jump and I will catch you. So he said, I jumped, and that son of a bitch turned and went to the house. So he said, I picked myself up and dusted myself off and said a little gravel rash and beat up a little bit and went to the house. And he said, I was skinned up and bleeding, and he was just sitting there eating. And he said, I walked in and asked him, why did you do that? He said, you let that be a lesson to you. He said, you don't never trust nobody. He said, it took me 36 years, but I just got even with that son of a bitch. So that's the kind of people.
Yeah.
It was, but I learned a lot. And not so much how to do things, but how not to do things.
Which is a valuable lesson.
It's a very valuable lesson. And I had one other experience as I got older that I worked for a guy, first exposure I had to the welding and fabrication, and the guy was a wizard. I mean, he could do anything, but his business practices were not the best. And I learned a tremendous amount from him also, both technically and what not to do in business. And, you think back and there's a plan for us. I mean, I'm a believer, and I think God puts us in different places along the way. He knows what he's doing. We don't know at the time, but when you look back, I'm grateful for those lessons, and it helped me later in life a bunch. Pattern yourself differently, and but yeah.
How do I ask this question? Is the question. You think a lot. You think a lot. You always have thought a lot, and you can tell by listening to your stories.
Okay.
How do you relay to the next generation about how to think for yourself and figure things out without living the lifestyle that you lived?
With our kids, we were fortunate in that we could work our kids. And it was a different kind of a deal. I mean, we worked them pretty hard. They got paid pretty well for it. But
when did you start paying them?
When? Well, by the time they were 13, I suppose, they were in the shop. They weren't supposed to be, but they were in the shop and they were doing things and they were getting paid. Mm-hmm. They didn't ever get an allowance. We didn't ever do allowances.
Yeah.
But they got paid for working. And so they grew up They grew up with us. They watched how we did things. I don't ever remember us sitting and lecturing or saying, now this is how it's done. We did talk about why you do things a certain way, why the way you treat people, based on not on what you heard, but what they did to you or for you or to you or however. Judge them that way. Just our basic business principles. I mean, they watched it and they knew it and they understood it. We were wide open with our kids. We never did the deal where, oh God, we never did that. Mm-hmm. My dad never did anything. And then you talk to his brothers and, oh yeah, he was doing plenty, but we didn't ever do that. He said, no, this is what we tried. This is how it worked out. And whether they learn from it or not, but it doesn't do any good to pretend like you didn't do it and make the mistakes. I just think that's foolish. Mm-hmm. But the grandkids is a different deal. And it's the times we live in and the technology we live with. And I don't know how we struggle with this, Wade. They're not all of them, but we've got a couple that they get on that screen. And I mean, they just vegetate, and they don't want to get off of it. They get mad. They get on the fight. If the parents try to take them off of it, it's not a healthy situation. And it's really tough for me. My wife and I talk about this. What do we do? Because my deal was I wasn't very diplomatic, and my wife reminded me just last night how I'm not very diplomatic now either. But it was, by God, this is the way it is. But you can't do it with them. I mean, first, they're not your kids, but it's difficult and it's painful to watch. Mm-hmm. And it's not just my grandkids, it's kids as a whole. We had a situation, I guess it would have been maybe New Year's Eve. And one of our grandkids was over with some friends at a house that's pretty near the house we live in town. Well, he said there was quite a bunch of them, and they kind of split up, and there were 3 of them, him and 2 friends, and then the rest of them went somewhere. Well, they just kind of went walking. Well, they came over, and he said, well, we'll just go to my grandparents' house. And he said, we'll just go in the garage, and they'll get us some Gatorade and some stuff. So they know the key codes to everything, so they got in the garage, and we never even heard them. And so the next morning, my wife called over to his house to see if he could come stay, because he's going to have the grandkids, the younger boys, there's 4 of them, kind of the same age, stay. And his dad said, no, he'd be grounded till he's about 30, and he's not going anywhere. And she said, well, what happened? He said, well, he was in your house last night. And they're kids. I mean, we did a lot of stuff when we were kids we weren't supposed to, but in today's world, and even at my house, I mean, I keep a handgun pretty handy, and something bad could have happened. It didn't, but it could have. But anyway, these kids were all instructed by their parents that they would either come in person and talk to us, or they would send a note. We got a note from the 3rd kid, she's a young lady, a couple days ago, and the message was fine. I'm sorry, it was poor judgment. But she's an 8th grader. Her handwriting, and I remember growing up how the girls took really a lot of pride in their handwriting. Our 8-year-old grandson had better handwriting than she had. No punctuation, wrong use of words like me and instead of Tom and Dick and I. It was me and so-and-so and so-and-so. Misspelled words in it. It was like, holy God, they're 8th graders. What are we doing? Not as a society. What the hell are we allowing kids to just slide? And maybe, and I asked my wife, but now I don't know this young lady. But I said, is she not very sharp? And she said, well, I don't know, but to look at that, you might wonder, you know. But it troubled me to no end to read that note. From now, if the goose had written that note at 8 years old, a pretty good note.
Mm-hmm.
But as an 8th grader, it was frightening. It was troubling, is what it was. Because, man, you ought to know just basic grammar and things. If you can't communicate, you can't. I don't think you can get much done if you can't communicate. I think that's probably the most important skill that we gain or whatever, learn and try to polish or whatever is you've got to be able to communicate. And I'm standing here stumbling over words right and left, but if you can't communicate, I don't know how the hell you do anything.
Yeah, and I'm 41. Just in the last 5-10 years, I've started to understand the importance of communication and the specifics in language, which I probably just said that incorrectly.
No, but
just precisely the meaning of a word. I didn't understand the meanings of a lot of words that I was using. Mm-hmm. It's pretty important.
It is.
Because what you say might not be what you think you're saying.
Absolutely.
And as far as grammar and punctuation and spelling and structure, I'm not saying a word.
Okay. But again, the times we live in and the technology we live with are, in my opinion, undermine that tremendously. Because now we do texts and emails. I am opposed to communicating with a text or an email on anything more important than like Tuesday at 2:00. If there's any chance at all that the subject at hand could lead to misinformation, misunderstanding, a conflict of some kind, if they can't see your eyes, they got to hear your voice in my world.
Yeah.
Okay. So the best thing to do is if you've got a problem with somebody, you need to be able to look at them.
Yeah.
And they can see whether there's rage, whether there's anger, there's understanding, whatever. They can see that. And then how your voice sounds, if they can't see it, your voice is pretty good at sharing those emotions as well.
Yeah.
But this text and email, it's lousy.
Do you think people had this same conversation about telephones?
They might have. I mean, everything we do, every step we take is a major step at the time. I mean, you know, it's like my dad, you know, my God, we never did that when we were kids. But television, rock and roll music. I mean, the world was going to end in the 50s when Elvis Presley came out, and I mean, that was the devil's work, you know. Well, there's some damn good music came out of that part of the world, and my family are musicians, and I'm kind of a closet sort of a musician, and I've been here just the last few days. I've been watching this thing about Muscle Shoals, Alabama, and I'd never really even heard of it, but that's where Elvis and all that sound, that Southern, that's where it all came from. And so, yeah, the world was going to come to a screeching halt. I mean, we were all going to burn in hell because of that rock and roll music. So now it's something else. The other thing that we didn't have to deal with, especially my generation, there were a few kids smoking some dope, but they were the real outliers. I mean, there were 2 or 3 of them in a class of 52 that tried that when I got to Grable. Our grandkids, they're inundated with that stuff. I mean, they're surrounded by it, and
there's no getting away from it.
There's no getting away from it, and the other demons that lay out there. I mean, like STDs and all the stuff that hell we never dreamed about when we were kids. I mean, it's right there, front and center, you know, full face on, and I'm just damn glad we're not raising our kids now and that we raised our kids when we did.
Mm-hmm.
But my wife and I talk about this. I mean, we grew up in, I don't know if it was ignorance or just innocence or what, but shit, things kids worry about today, and young kids, listening to our grandkids talk about sexual activity and this and that stuff. It's like, holy God.
Stuff you didn't know about till you're 30.
Absolutely had no idea. I mean, we understood. Hell, we grew up on a farm, for God's sake. We knew where things came from and how it happened. I mean, I don't remember anybody ever talking to us about it, but we damn sure knew what the deal was. But we did, yeah, the things that they deal with, and we never dreamed of it, you know. Didn't do it. We had a good life, and you know, my wife and I, when my dad lost the farm, it was in '66. I graduated in '69, and all I ever wanted to do was farm and ranch. That's all I ever wanted to do. And interest rates were anywhere from 18 to 21%, and agricultural land was selling at developmental prices. There was no way in hell you could get started if there wasn't something going to be at least a portion of it handed to you. Mm-hmm. And I don't mean handed, but handed down through the family or whatever.
Yeah.
And so that wasn't in the cards. And my folks had moved to Grable. I'd gone to school in one place my whole life till my senior year. And because of my dad and I's friction or whatever, he wouldn't let me stay in Manderson.
Okay, so what about friction? Like how I got a dad, everybody's
got one.
The situation, but like how bad was the friction? Was it just
a kid
didn't get along, or was it serious friction?
No, it wasn't serious friction, but it was I'm a lot like my dad. There's not a lot of give. And at that point in my life, there wasn't any give. And I didn't understand and appreciate the pressures that my parents must have been under, Wade. I mean, they lost everything. Got 9 kids on the ground. What the hell are you going to do? You got to feed them. You got to do whatever. I cannot imagine what it must have been like. I know that the family moved a lot, and I never thought anything of it till not all that long ago. And I thought, well, hell, the reason they moved, they were getting evicted. I mean, they couldn't pay the rent, so they'd move somewhere, and then they'd get run off, and if they couldn't come up with enough money, and my dad had gone into partnership with a guy on this place on the mountain. They bought a lodge, and it had been, and I don't remember, but as I recall, it had been abandoned for about 15 years, and the Forest Service either had to find somebody to take it or they were going to tear it down, and it's a fabulous place, absolutely beautiful. Well, Dad and his school teacher scraped up some money and bought it. And it wasn't too long after that there started to be a little bit of a rub there, disagreement on how things should be done, so on and so forth. And it was kind of fortuitous, I guess you could say, that my dad had his hand in that when he lost the farm. And he bought this guy out. He had to go scrounge up some money, but he got it done and got him bought out. But now they got to build this from scratch. And I was totally independent and had been. I mean, don't tell me what to do. You know, I've been making my own decisions now haven't even been living at home for 2.5 years. And now you're going to tell me that I'm going to jump this high and I'm going to do that. No, it ain't going to happen. Well, he said, and my dad and my dad, not so much, but I had some uncles and some people that they figured I was going to hell. I mean, I love trouble, and I stirred up as much as I could in school. I didn't learn shit in 4 years of high school, but I learned how to work the system. Okay, that's what I learned in 4 years. Anyway, I mean, one of my uncles, my mom's brother, went to her and he said, he's got to come live with me. He said, this somebody's going to end up in jail, going to end up in prison. I mean, I wouldn't go to prison, but I was stretching the wire just about as tight as I could and thought that was my job. Anyway, Dad said, no, hell, I'd grown up down there. Everybody and their dog said, you come live with us. We'll pay you and you can go to school. And I mean, they knew what I was and they didn't think I should have to leave school 1 year before I graduated. I did have to leave school 1 year before I graduated. We got a wife out of the deal. So, and that's the only woman on this earth I'd ever made it with. Guaranteed. And it hadn't been easy for her, but she's done it. But there ain't no way in hell I'd ever made it with anybody else. But the hell was I going? Anyway.
I'm not sure, but I'm interested.
We moved, okay? And shit, I had a point. I was going to make a point.
Well, Forest Service cabin deal.
Okay.
And then that deal was going south.
It wasn't that the farm had gone south. That deal wasn't going south, but they were bringing it out of the ashes. It was like a phoenix. I mean, there was nothing there. It had been abandoned. They had picked up a little bit of business while they were in this partnership, but Dad had a vision on how he thought this should work. But
and the goal was like a guest ranch type deal. Okay.
Yeah. Yep. A family summer vacation deal and then hunting. Mm-hmm. And it ended up being a great deal, but it took a while to get it there. And so there was no future for me in the Bighorn Basin. So I had made a friend when I was fighting. I fought fire for 2 years, okay? When I got out of high school, the first summer, I worked for my uncle, farming. And then my dad had become pretty good friends with the forest ranger, the district forest ranger, through his involvement on the mountain. And he was a grand man. He was a good guy. And I went to school. When I went to Grable, his son and I were in the same class. So we weren't tight friends or anything, but Henry, it was a small community. I mean, everybody knew everybody. So I don't know if he had an interest, but he kind of had a concern. He looked out for kids. Most adults are looking out for kids. Anyway, I went to school. I borrowed some money and went to school. Started college in January, the January after I got out of high school, and just went there because I didn't want to work for a while. Had no idea but I just tired of working. Well, it was a stupid thing to do because I had no money. I went down there and worked my ever-loving ass off just to stay alive. And so got back and
in Sheridan.
I came back. I was living with my uncle.
Okay, so where are you going to school? Was this high school?
Casper.
Okay.
Casper College.
Okay.
And so I came back and I couldn't get I had borrowed enough money from the school, through the school, that I couldn't get my grades until I had that paid down to a certain point. And it was middle August before I got it paid down to ever and see what I had done. And what I had done wasn't very good. And at that time, it cost me a lot of money, like $2,750 for this like a D in physical education. And I mean, it was not very impressive, Wade. And I thought, I can't afford to do this. And I can't afford to walk away from $2,750.
Okay. What made you think that going to college was a good idea if you couldn't quite get that last year of high school in?
No, I got my last year of high school.
Oh, you did?
I graduated from high school. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
No, I graduated. I just was living in Grable instead of being where I thought I belonged in Anderson.
I see.
But I got the wife. And I had some more work experiences and life experiences that helped. They all help. Every one of them along the way. But once I turned 18, you couldn't go to work in town until you were 18. Which was another thing that was really hard to swallow.
Yeah.
Because we'd been working for years, but you couldn't do it. Anyway, the forest ranger guy, he ran into me somewhere, and he said, so how's school going? And I said, well, I told him what I'd done. I said it didn't really wasn't very productive. But said, I've got pretty nice debt now. And he said, well, what are you going to do? And I said, I don't know. I said, I don't know where I can scrape up enough money to keep it going. He said, you get through it. You get through this year. And he said, I will find you a job. I'll get you a job on that fire crew. Because you could make a lot of money fighting fire. I wasn't qualified to be on the fire crew, but I knew Henry Bond, and he was the man. And I didn't know for some time how he did it. But anyway, so that was my plan. I went down and got a job, got 2 or 3 jobs, and got through that year. Came home. We were trying to remember if we got married that year. We might have even got married that year. No, we'd get married the following year. Anyway, went back and went to work for the Forest Service. And what I learned later was he was in charge of hiring a trail crew. They had actual trail crews. Forest Service used to do things. And they don't do things anymore, but there's a lot of them. But anyway, and then on his forest, there was an interregional fire crew based there. I don't know how much actual input he had into the hiring, but that's where this crew was based. So on paper, he hired me on the trail crew. I didn't know this till later. And then he saw to it that they came up one short on the fire crew. And he had to call the regional office or whatever in Denver and say, I got a problem. And on this short notice, there's only one thing I can do, but I got to have that fire crew full. And I'm going to pull a guy off that crew and move him over. And that's how I got on there, because you had to be a forestry major or have prior firefighting experience. So that, I make enough money to stay in school. And met a guy, lifelong friend now, that lived in Sheridan. And so it was the end of our second summer on the fire crew. And we'd been married. Marva was pregnant. And we went over to visit these friends that lived in Sheridan on Labor Day weekend. And the fire crew was done at that point for the season. And I had never seen green grass in my life. I'd never been anywhere, Wade. Mm-hmm. But I'd never seen green grass in August and September. And that particular year was like it was 2 years ago in Sheridan, when in August the grass was this high and green as a gourd. And that's what it was. And they were showing us the country. And we were up Little Goose Creek from Bighorn driving. And I said, you got to stop. Just pull over. And I got out and I walked out in the right of way. And I couldn't see over the grass. And it was green. And Labor Day weekend. And I just stood there for a little bit, and I got back and picked up and told Marv, I said, we're moving here. This is where we're coming here. This is the place, you know. And we did. And again, people, you get the right people at the right time. And like I said, somebody's dealing the cards, and if you're lucky, you pick up the right ones. And all my life, Wade, I've picked up the right card. And whether I knew it, I'm not sure I knew it most of the time, but I managed to draw the right card. And Sheridan had been phenomenal to us, and was from the get-go. All I'd ever done besides farm and ranch was I'd worked in a feed store when I was a senior in high school for a few months. There were 2 feed stores in Sheridan. Well, it's the only place I can go where I can actually tell them without lying that I know something, you know. So I went to the first one and stood in there for probably 10 minutes waiting for whoever it was to show up. There was nobody in the room where I was. But they had like bottles of terramycin and stuff sitting in there. And the dirt was, and I'm not exaggerating a bit, you know how those big shoulder, I don't know, like those 300 milliliter bottles, and they got a big shoulder on them and then come up. The dirt piled up on the shoulder till it came to a point, like in an hourglass, and then just kept, and it was piled up around the base of the bottom. This place was freaking filthy. Anyway, this guy comes in and he said, "Can I help you?" And I said, "No, I'm pretty sure I'm in the wrong place. There was no way I could go to work in there." So I walked across the street. There was another feed store over there. Walked in there, it was like walking into a jewelry store. This place was spick and span, spotless, and I mean, it was bright and lit, and things were going on in there. So I need to talk to somebody about a job, so they take me back and introduced me to the boss, and I told him my story, and he said, "I don't have anything." And I said, "Well, I'm going to work here." And he said, "Well, you're not going to work here now." And I said, "Well, I'm going to work here." And anyway, we started, and we were over there for 3 days, and every day I was there when they unlocked the door. I was sitting on the step waiting for them. And the third day, he said, "You're kind of bound and determined to get here." And I said, "I'm coming here. I mean, that's not a question. It's just what it is." He said, "I can't put you to work." But he said, "You go to Padlock Ranch, I'll guarantee you they'll put you to work." Well, it turned out that he had managed the Padlock Ranch for 17 years. And then he had left due to conflicts of interest and so on and so forth. So I went out there and did exactly what he said they would. And it was a job. It was not, the pay was terrible. I mean, we actually had to take out of our savings and we didn't do anything. We bought 1 6-pack of beer and went to the movie once in the months that we lived there. But we had to take out of our savings every month just to get by. And so Saturdays were my day off. Worked Sunday through Friday. So Saturday morning, I was sitting on the step at the feed store waiting for him every Saturday for months. And they finally called and said, "How much notice you need to give them?" I said, today. I said, "Yesterday I'd probably give them 5 minutes, but today I'll give them 2 weeks." He said, "Give them your notice." So I went there and went to work, and greatest job I ever had. I just fit there. And I'd been there about 2 weeks, and the boss his thing was always, "You got a minute? You got a minute?" And they're your minutes, so you tell me if I've got a minute. So he says, "Come in and sit down." So I sat down, and he said, "I got to ask you a question." He said, "I have never seen anybody in my life that was tenacious as you were about going to work somewhere." He said, "You never missed a Saturday." I said, "No, I didn't." He said, "Why?" I said, "Well, I don't know if you remember when we first met." He said, "Oh, I remember when we first met." I said, "You sent me to Padlock." He said, "Yeah." And I said, "You told me they'd put me to work, and they put me to work." And I said, "I worked at the Padlock for 10 days, and I got up on day 11, and I'm standing there shaving, and I said to myself, Self, anybody that sends you to Padlock owes you a goddamn job." It was the perfect thing. And I thought about before I rolled it, I thought, now, this is what I'm going to do, but I'm not sure how this is going to go, but this is how I'm going to play it. It was spot on perfect. It's what he wanted to hear, and we just bonded. And that guy turned out to be the single biggest influence and the most important mentor in my and our lives. Literally changed the trajectory of my life. And can't say enough about him. And I loved working for that guy. And it was interesting because he didn't pay very well. Paid minimum wage. That's what he paid. But it was a job, and I liked the job. And anyway, I worked there and come around to the end of the year, and I was driving truck and back and forth. I had a feed mill in Buffalo and the feed store in Sheridan. And in the winter, you just haul feed, and sometimes 3 loads a day. And so in the mornings, the guy, the foreman there, we stored. There was still an old brewery. It was defunct, but the old building was there, and they leased that building to store overflow stuff in, and then they stored their trucks in it. And so every morning he'd haul me over there early to take me to my truck. So it was after payday, and he said, "What'd you get?" I said, "What?" He said, "Your check." I said, "Oh, I don't look at them." I said, "I just took it home." He said, "You didn't think when it was in an envelope that maybe something?" I said, "No, never thought about it." He said, well, we're going to your house before we go to get that truck. So we went up there. And what this guy did, and I always wanted to do it at our business, but we couldn't. He took care of the people that were taking care of him. And your bonus might be 3 times your annual salary or your wages. I mean, he bonused the living daylights out of you. And it was fantastic. Well, he treated you like it was part yours. Mm-hmm. And you looked at it that way. Because a feed bag laying on the floor or an empty sack that hadn't been used, it wasn't an empty sack. That was a quarter or a dime, whatever it was, depending. Well, part of that dime's mine. Mm-hmm. That sucker's coming up, and it just, so that it gathered people like that. And if they weren't like that, they didn't last very long. And he listened to us. I mean, if he hired somebody and 2 or 3 days in, we don't like the guy, we just tell him, and we'd never see him again. And but I loved that man, and he loved me, and I didn't ever know exactly why, but he saw to it we met the right people. Lessons, they were expanding and growing, and he'd call me in, and his partner's name was Emerson, and he'd say, Emerson and I are thinking about buying the elevator in Claremont, or buying a feed store in Worland, or buying a whatever, and we want to know what you think about it. What I thought about it. But you were supposed to have a notebook, and you were supposed to take some notes, because he was going to call you in about 3 weeks, and he wanted to know what you'd been thinking. And so he'd call you in, sit you down, say, get out your notes, let's start down through them. You'd lay them out, and he'd take them apart one at a time, and he'd say, okay, this one, this boat don't float, and this is why. Okay, this one, now this part of it's good, that part, but everything was a lesson. Mm-hmm. This guy was an astute businessman. He taught me, he tutored me and mentored me. And to this day, Wade, when I've got a decision to make, the first thing I do is sit down and say, okay, how would Ferris do this?
Ferris, that was his name?
Ferris Barnett, the greatest guy I ever knew. And yeah. He's a life changer for this boy.
In perfect timing.
Absolutely perfect timing. And, I was still at that, I'd buck you before. I mean, I was ready to buck you, but that was my first move, mm-hmm. depending on how things were going to go. I mean, my first day at the Padlock Ranch, I'd never been at a place like that. Well, they gather everybody up for a meeting every morning. It's like, what the hell? So the first day I understand is I don't know where I'm going, what I'm doing, or anything else. So there's probably 25 people in this room and not enough room for them. And I end up there's an old couch, and I end up sitting up on the back of the couch, and I've got a magazine. I don't know a soul in there. And I'm sitting in there, and I'm kind of looking out from under the brim of my hat, and kind of got a magazine, but I'm just listening. And he goes around the room with this guy, and he's telling everybody what they're going to do, and he gets this, hey, you boy. I was in my magazine, and hey, you boy. And about the third time, whoever was next to me drives an elbow, and he said, he's talking to you. And I looked at him and said loud enough everybody could hear me. I said, what? He said, he's talking to you. I said, he ain't talking to me. Ain't no way in hell he's talking to me. He said, I ain't his goddamn boy. So I went back to my magazine for a minute, and then I looked up, and the eyes, I had him. I said, you talking to me? And he said, yeah, I am. I said, well, let's get something straight right now. I ain't your goddamn boy, okay? I never was, and I never will be. There were 2 people ever walked this earth could call me boy, and you ain't one of them. So I said, I've got a name like everybody else in here. And if you want to address me, you will figure out my name. Period. So he doesn't know my name, and he's not smart enough to say, well, why don't you introduce yourself to the group, And so we get through it, and there's a guy in there, and he's a foreman. He's not a worker. So this meeting breaks up, and he comes and he says, "You come with me." So we go outside, and he said, "You don't know me from Dick's Hat Band." But he said, "I've known you since you were that big." He said, "I watched you grow up." And he had a monument business, like gravestone business, in Basin, Wyoming. And those communities are so small, everybody knew everybody. But he said, I know you. And he said, I don't know what they did. And he's driving me down to Acme. I'm going to be cutting hay. So he's hauling me along. He said, I don't know what they told you when they hired you, but he said, whatever it was a lie. He said, just the way it goes around here. And he said, oh, and by the way, he said, that was remarkably well done. Anyway, he said, that was perfect, you know. And there was no backup in me. And to a fault. I mean, sometimes you got to know when you got to give a little bit. Billy had no give. None. Ferris put give in me. And kind of softened my mouth up a little bit, I guess. But yeah, it was perfect timing. And like I said, changed our life. When we started in business, we knew people that we had to know because he'd seen to it. He was on a bank board where we could get a little money. And yeah, and I would go talk to him just about things. Say, okay, here's what I'm thinking, you know. And hell, I hadn't worked for him for 4 or 5 years, but he was still our mentor, my mentor, and yeah, wonderful man.
Yeah. So before we get too into Sheridan and that part of your life, I'm going to try to get you to tell a story because I love the story.
Okay.
It's about you driving around with some buddies and pulling into a gas station.
I know which one you're talking about. It was my first year at Casper College, and there was a guy that had gone to school there the year before. He was a little bit older than most of us, like maybe 3 or 4 years. But I don't know if he'd come back from Vietnam and then gone to college or whatever. But he came back, and I didn't really know him, but he knew the guys that I kind of hung around with. Anyway, he said, well, we're going town, you know. So there was 4 or 5 of us, and we get in this car. I don't mention that guy's name either, but he was, if anybody had a nickel, the kid that had the car had the nickel. We didn't have squat. But we scraped up enough money, we go to town and we were partying. And we partied till we're broke. So we got to go back to school, back to the college, to the dorms where we lived. And Kenny said, man, he said, I got to get some gas. And so we pull into this gas station, and it was a self-serve gas station. There was it was a full-service gas station. Yeah. There was no self-serve. Anyway, we figure out how much money we got. We got 50 cents. Buy a gallon and a half of gasoline. So this big, tall gentleman comes out, and he seemed old. He might have been 65 or so. He was old compared to us, you know, and he was a big, tall, lanky guy. And he comes out, and Kenny rolls his window down, and he said, can I help you, gentlemen? He said, yes, sir. He said, we need 50 cents worth of regular. The guy backs up kind of a step, and leans down, puts his hands kind of on the door sill or the windowsill of that car, and he looks in there, looks us all over real kind of slow and deliberately, and straightens up and he said, you sons of bitches got 50 cents? He read the room pretty well.
That's astute.
That's what we had.
Yeah.
It was 50 cents. But, yeah, we were flush, you know.
Yeah.
But no problem.
That's all you needed was 50 cents.
That's all we needed. We'd play poker. We played a lot of 2-card knock poker. And I haven't played any since then. But I remember one time, and I was so broke, but I went out in the parking lot at the dorm, took the seats out of my car and pulled the carpets out of the thing and found like 27 cents. We played nickel knock. I was back in the game. I have no idea how it turned out, but I remember pulling the carpet out of that car looking for change, you know? And yeah, we were broke. When I first got to school and didn't have a nickel, but it wasn't very long, like maybe 10 days, 2 weeks, there was an ad pasted up in the lobby of the dorm, and I think there was one in every dorm. This guy's looking for people to ride colts. Bingo, you know. So I show up, and there's like 20 guys out there in contention for these colt riding jobs. And this guy was a lunatic. He was, he was awful. Anyway, stuck it out that night, went back the next night, and there were 3. The third night, there was me. Anyway, this guy was not a horseman. He was an optometrist. He had money. And he had these horses, and he raised the horses. They were an American Standard, if I remember right. They were kind of a big animal. And blue tick dogs he must have had 80 of them suckers. And he worked all these colts in a running W. So it was a phenomenal way to build confidence and everything in these colts, because he would run at them with this baling wire deal with a bunch of cans strung on it, rattle and bang and chase them, and then he would holler, whoa, and if they didn't stop, then you're supposed to yank the front feet out from under them. I'm watching this, what in the hell are we doing, you know? So we would just terrorize these colts and jerk the front feet out from under them until they'd finally just stand there and shake. And then you could do something with them. And he was gonna make cutting horses. And I don't know anything about cutting horses. But I didn't think this is the way you made anything. And so what you did, you rode these colts, and then you train them. You didn't use your feet. You didn't use anything. You did this. And they were supposed to cue off the way you turned your head. And it's like, no, no. And he carried a little buggy whip, just like the buggy whip we all have, the little straight little fiberglass whip with the popper on it, and he'd whack you with the damn thing. And if you weren't doing what he wanted you to do. Anyway, I just endured. I got paid $15 a ride, and he was satisfied. You could get a colt out, you could warm him up, work him, cool him down. 45 minutes, you could cover one. I was good money in 1970, 71. That was a lot of money. So I was doing fine money-wise. And Marva came down to visit one weekend. She was still in high school, and her uncle lived down there. So she came down to visit, to stay with her uncle, and then we could spend some time together. And it was raining like crazy that weekend, and he couldn't ride his colts when it was wet. He didn't ever ride them in the wet. But he would take these, somehow or another, he managed to get people to send him horses that had problems. And I have no idea why they sent them to him. But some lady from Colorado had sent this paint horse to him. And I got along fine with him. Just rode him outside. Just get him the hell away from there and ride him outside, and wasn't having any trouble with him at all. Anyway, so it's raining, and my girlfriend's there. So I said, I called him up. And I said, I'd kind of like to just knock off for the weekend, because it's raining and everything. He said, no, I want you to trim the feet on that stud horse. And then he said, I want you to clean those stalls. And then he said, you put a ride on that paint horse, which took up all frickin' day long. And it was a miserable ride. The wind was blowing, it was raining, and it was awful. And the colt wasn't any happier than I was. And anyway, we got through it and got done. And I went to get paid. I had to go to his eye doctor's office to get my checks. That's where I got paid. And so I went down there to get paid. And he said, well, that Saturday you only rode one horse. I said, time out. I said, that's right, I rode one horse. But I said, what you don't understand is how much I'm worth when I'm afoot. And I said, $15 an hour. He said, that's ridiculous. Nobody makes $15 an hour. I said, I do. And he
had no choice.
He had no choice. So I got paid $15 an hour for being on the ground. That's the last time he put me on the ground. But anyway, I went down there one day, and he had that colt had been stillborn or whatever. He said, I want you to take this colt in there and feed it to those dogs. And I said, you got to be out of your freaking mind. Those dogs were just at the wire, and it was like, there ain't no way in hell I'm going in there. I said, well, if I'm going in there, I'm going in there horseback. I ain't going in there afoot. And he said, well, I don't know what's going to happen. I said, well, I don't either, but I ain't going in there afoot. So I took that colt and laid him across my lap and went in there and just stuck my knife in it, split him up the middle, dropped him off, and he was on the gate, and he let me out of there. And I might have been there an hour and a half. There wasn't a hair left of that colt when I left, an hour and a half. Everything was gone. It's like, you got to be shitting me, you know. And I don't know that he ever sold one. I don't know what he did with him, but it was another lesson in life, you know.
Lunatic. You said it earlier.
I mean, yeah, he was just nuts.
Yeah.
But he had the money to play these games but he made up his own rules, and he obviously wasn't a student of anything. He didn't go, well, I'm going to do this. I'm going to go watch people that make horses and figure out how they do it. And I always thought, you know, if you want to do something, go watch somebody that knows what they're doing and try to pattern what you do after them a little bit. No, he didn't do that.
He didn't do that.
He had his own ways. But anyway, those are my school stories. And, I had one other good one while I was down there. A guy I met in college who lived next door to me in the dorms. And he had a pretty good gig. He was working for a ranch just north of Casper. And as it turns out, the guy that owned the ranch owned a ready mix business. And his daughter and son-in-law were on the ranch. And these two were handicapped. They were not sharp people at all. And he knew that they were there so that he could keep his grandkids from starving to death, because the guy he was not sharp, and she was no sharper. Anyway, I'd gone out and with Annie on a couple weekends when they were doing things and like helping brand and stuff, and he'd say, you want to come with me and help? So when he was a year ahead of me in school, so he was leaving, he said, you want that job? And I said, hell yeah, I want that job. He said, I'll see to it that it's yours. So I get the job. It's tailor-made for a college kid. And I mean, I worked when I was out there, but if you ever had a bad day, you know, because you were the boss and you just ride fence. You know, it only happened a couple days a month, but I better ride fence today. Just take off and go. I get out there one time and he's trying to load some horses in a pickup. And the horses they had were just garbage. You could do nothing with them at all. And I said, Don, what are you doing? Well, he said, we got to load some horses. I said, for what? Because everything was right there. You didn't have to go anywhere to do anything. He said, well, we got to go to my dad's. And I'd been to his dad's once. He had a little place kind of over in North Casper. And I said, for what? He said, well, his hogs got out. I said, oh. And you got, what's your plan? He said, we're going to take these horses over there and rope those hogs. I said, how many times have you had horses and hogs in the same place? I said, I don't have a lot of experience, but as near as I can tell, they think they're bears.
Or tried to rope one.
Yeah, their head hangs clear down. Their snoot's about that far off the ground. I mean, and they got if they turn away from it, they just back out of it anyway. You can't put a rope on a hog. I said, Don, that won't work. I said, you're going to have these horses all cut up. I said, this is going to be a disaster. Well, what the hell are we going to do? I said, you know what a sheep panel is? Well, no. I said, well, we need something about 5 foot long and 3.5 or 4 foot high, maybe 2 of them, and a 5-gallon bucket. He said, what? I said, let's find something, and we'll go and I'll show you what we do with these pigs. So we go over there and we find these hogs and we just take those panels and they're not that difficult to work with. You just walk them to where you need them, and then if they won't go through the fence, just put the bucket over their head and back them up. They'll go backwards with a bucket over their head, just fine and dandy. So we put the hogs away. But he's going to load these horses, and we're going to go gather these pigs. And, man, they don't like them. They don't want anything to do with them. But that's the way we did things on the A&B Cattle Company.
Yeah, there's a right way to do things and a wrong way to do things. Like
Did you ever read any of Spike Van Cleve stuff?
Absolutely, all of it.
So I love that, and And he grew up kind of like where we grew up in at least certain respects. The way he wore his boots, same way my dad wore his boots. He probably wore a 10, but a 9 looked pretty good. So try to put your feet in an 8.5, and then you can't even walk.
Yeah.
So my dad was guilty of that to a degree. But there were 3 ways of doing things: the easy way, the hard way, and Dad's way that made the hard way look easy.
Yeah.
That was when I read that, I thought, oh my God, he grew up where we did.
Bill Long has got a saying. I don't know if you ever met Bill, but he told me one time, he said, you want proof that God's got a sense of humor? Sure, let's hear it, Bill. And he says, God's idea of humor is giving you a son, making him exactly like you, and then watching you two try to get along.
Okay.
That's proof that God's got a sense of humor.
Yeah, absolutely. And doesn't that happen so much?
Yeah. Yep. It's a struggle.
It is. It is. And the similarities between fathers and sons, right down to the gait, are first time I ever really noticed it was years and years ago when first got on the wild board and we're up there trying to get ready for the rodeo, and Tracy and Todd Swanson are up there, and they, whatever we were doing, we were in the arena and they turned and walked straight away from me. And it was, my God.
Couldn't tell them apart.
Couldn't tell them apart. Everything about it. And I thought, holy shit, I wonder if my kids and I do that.
Yeah.
And I never thought about it with me and my dad. I know we had to run. My dad walked really fast, and he didn't wait for anybody. And if you were 5 and you wanted to go, you were going to keep up or you would be left.
Mm-hmm.
And so we learned to travel like that. And I think we probably did walk like he did.
Yeah.
But that deal. And then as I start watching people, and I do think also that everything about us is so individual. We don't think about it, but we've all got a gait that's ours. Everybody walks, but we all walk our own way. You can recognize people by the way they move. You don't have to know them that well, but you can see them a long ways away and know who that is just by watching them move. And we're interesting beasts.
Yeah.
In so many ways. And the only ones on earth that can record their history, and the only ones that don't pay any attention to it.
Yeah.
You take an old cow elk, she's got her habits, and she does it the same way. And somebody knocks her off or she dies, and the next one that takes that position, she knows that every year they've gone this way, and 2 or 3 of them get knocked off when they go through that pass. They'll never go through that pass again.
Mm-hmm.
They're students of history. We aren't.
Yeah. Well, want to take a break for a minute?
Sure.
And then we'll come back and talk about Sheridan.
Okay.
All right, real quick, we got to pay some bills. Got to say thank you to the Bozeman Stampede, Bozeman, Montana.
Folks, the Bozeman Stampede, greatest rodeo in the world, maybe the universe. Huge crowds, beautiful bulls, riders tougher than my Twitter feed. Other rodeos, sad. This one wins so much you'll get tired of winning, but you won't. Believe me.
So I had to take a little break, but coming back, you were talking about your mentor in Sheridan.
Yes, sir.
And you hadn't really officially said you weren't working at the feed mill anymore, but that's kind of where you were in your timeline.
Yeah, I'm trying to think exactly how that worked out. The friend that kind of led us to that community, his family had a fence company. And we had an opportunity to go into business there. And so I left the feed company to buy in to that on not a sizable level, but needed to do something for myself.
Yeah, but I got to ask this.
Yes.
You'd worked, how long did you work at the feed company?
About 3.5 years.
And by then you had kind of put some money away, got to where you could operate a little bit.
Yeah, and I knew where I could borrow some money,
Mm-hmm.
more so than having my own.
How much was interest then?
9.5.
Okay.
10.
So it was Was it coming down or had it not gone up?
No, it had come down considerably from when, like in the real late 60s.
Mm-hmm.
It had come down a bunch. I'm trying to remember. We bought our first house in 1974, and our note was 9.25. And people told us we were insane for two reasons: the amount we paid for the house, and also the interest rates. Said you'll never make it work.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we didn't have any trouble. I mean, we lived like coyotes for a while because we were paying off a down payment plus we had to borrow the down payment from our folks but
hey, since we're on that subject, what about your folks? What ended up after you left? What ended up happening?
Okay, they were in that business for 45 years
with
that
hunting
place on the
outfitting.
mountain. Yep.
So that all worked out.
Oh yeah, it worked out great. Yeah. It was a great deal for them, and it could have been. My dad was kind of a one-man crusader against inflation. My dad was a very strong, very conservative guy, and he just, by God, that's the way it was. And he was also a politician. My dad was in the state legislature for 16 years.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and so he was. My dad is a one in a million. I tell you just a brief story about my father. Our oldest son went to school in England on a Rotary scholarship to get his master's degree. And he was married. He and his wife were living in England. And the way the Rotary thing works, and I've never been a part of Rotary, but it's a great program. They provide these scholarships. And then when you get to wherever it is you're going, you kind of have like a host family. It kind of becomes your home away from home. They didn't live there, but they'll have you for a home-cooked meal every so often, and they just kind of see to it that you kind of get integrated socially and things like that.
Yeah.
So during the time that they're going to school over there, all of Mitch's family, Marva and I and the brothers, we all get over there, not necessarily together, but we're over there for a period of time. And Jenny's family did the same thing. Her brothers and her folks got over there. So we were all acquainted with the host family. We'd gone to dinner at their house and spent time with them, and they kind of showed us around when we were there. And the guy was very much a history buff and had some neat historical facts to share with you, and so on and so forth. Well, about a year and a half after the kids came back, after Mitch graduated with that, they came to visit the colonists. And that's just drive me nuts. And I would explain to him, I said, we bailed you out of every tight spot you've been in for about the last 80 years. And, I think we could be considered a little better than colonists.
Little respect,
but
wouldn't hurt.
But he didn't have it in him. Anyway, they came over, and they probably spent 6 weeks over here. And they came over to see the country. And he was an interesting guy. I mean, they landed in Casper, rented a car, and he headed out, and I don't think he drove on an oil road. It took him 3 days to get here, and he knew he'd been to Sussex, and he'd been all over in these he traveled the gravel roads. Mm-hmm. He wanted to see America off the highway. Anyway, very interesting guy. One of the things we did while he was here, we took him up the mountain, and we're up there for like 3 days and 2 nights or something while they were here. And it was shortly before they left to go home. And this fellow's name was John. Great guy. So the night before they leave, Mitch and Jenny have a barbecue at their house. And it's our family and her family. So there's everybody that they knew, that they'd got to know while the kids were going to school over there, was at this party. And Mitch he's a chef. He's a cook. And so he's busy, and he's preparing food, and we're all doing everything outside.
And Mitch is?
Our oldest son, the one that had gone to school in England. And the Englishman is rattling on about this deal about he never came out of character. And he just kept going, and nobody was really paying attention to him. And finally, Mitch stopped and he said, "John, what the hell are you talking about?" He said, "I'm talking about your grandfather." He said, "When we were up there," he said, "I watched him like a hawk." And he said, "He's developed this persona that he uses when people are around." And he said, he said, "I watched him. I knew I could get." He said, "Not once did that guy break character." And Mitch looks at him and he said, "John, that's no character. There's no character in there at all." He said, "That's my grandpa." And he walks over and he puts his hand on Mitch's shoulder and he said, "Oh, Mitch," he said, "there is nobody like that."
That's just in the movies.
There's one. But he was special.
So I know some people that have went broke and have lost some places, and it's hard.
Very difficult.
How did he come through that? I mean, do you feel like it changed him?
You know, I think it hardened him some, Wade. There were some, and I'm not saying that they were out of line, but like there were some real bitter feelings between him and the banker. Mm-hmm. And the banker didn't talk to him. This is one of the few things I remember. His dad went in and he just threw the sale bill in front of him. And I mean, that was it. It's the first, and that's kind of a chicken shit deal. But, and so it hardened him. My dad was never gentle. He didn't have any gentle in him. Mm-hmm. But I do think, and determination in it, and I don't know if that's what rubbed off on us. I'm probably the hardest one and the most, I don't know, hard-headed maybe of my siblings. Hard-headedness kind of runs in there, but just the fact that there's no second place, I guess, in life at least. I mean, you know, if you're going to do it, you're going to win, and you're gonna have some wrecks, but you're not quitting. You know, you're going to figure out if that didn't work. Okay, why didn't it work? What, you know the concept is okay, but the execution wasn't right or whatever. But I think it hardened my dad.
Yeah.
And he wasn't cruel. He wasn't selfish. He was one of the most self-centered people that I've ever known.
Was it self-centered or was it goal-driven?
No, self-centered. Dad was, he loved, one of the things he loved about the mountain, he controlled everything. Mm-hmm. He controlled when the lights came on. He controlled when the lights went off because he made all the power. As I look back, and my siblings have talked about this, and our wives have talked about this. Like people come up there, well, tomorrow we're going to do this. It wasn't, would you like to?
Yeah.
This is what you're going to do tomorrow. And that wasn't, not you didn't work there. You were a guest. You were paying for the privilege to be told what you were going to do tomorrow. and paying pretty handsomely for it. But that's the way he ran it.
Yeah.
But he was the center of, the sun rose and set right there. Mm-hmm. And he was driven, but he was interesting in that respect too. My dad was not, and I don't know if I got this from my mom. I don't know where I got it, but Dad had no attention to detail. That didn't matter. Just get her done. Just get her done, you know. And when we first went into business, he was supportive. If that he needed something, he would bring it over so I could do it. And but I remember one time he wanted me to. I don't know if I was building a bumper or modifying a bumper or something on his pickup. And he comes over and he's going to be there while I'm doing this because it's like a 2.5 or 3 hour deal. And just do this. I said, why don't you go take my pickup and you go to town and you come back about 4:30 and we'll talk then because you can't be here when I'm working. And he said, well, it's fine. And I said, no, Dad, it's not fine. It's fine when it's right. It's not fine till it's right. And then it's fine. And he said, well, just fine for me. And I said, that's not the problem. But I said, the problem is someday, if I do it your way, somebody's going to come along that knows what it ought to be and look at that and say, who did that? And you're going to say, oh, hell, Billy did that for me. And I said, I don't need that kind of promotion. You know, just leave me alone. I'll do it my way. And if you don't want me to do it that way, you don't have to bring it here. Mm-hmm. But this is how it's going to be done. But if I'm going to do it, it's going to be done right.
Yeah.
No matter what it is. And I might not know what I'm doing, but I'm going to take the time to do what I think is. I'm not a carpenter at all. I can build some stuff out of wood. But the kids say, my God, Dad, was that going to be a bridge, or was that just going to be a little deal underneath here to cover up an opening, you know? I don't know how to build out of wood.
Yeah.
And but it looks nice when I get done and it's finished. There's no rough edges or anything anymore. But Dad, rough edges they're fine.
So I got to tell this story. The church here in town needed a sign hanger. So Ike volunteers this, and he goes and cuts the trees down, brings them up here. I'd been working for a log guy in Cody.
Okay.
He tells me, you should come up here and build this sign. Yeah, absolutely. It's for the church. I'll do that. So I come up and I bring my tools, like a scribe, Veritas scribe. And he's not around when I start this project. So I think the easiest way to do this, I'll just set this overhead on the ground, and then I'll take the 2 posts and I'll stand them up so it's upside down.
Right.
And I'll scribe it. So he gets in the skid steer and he shows up and he's sitting there in the skid steer and he's watching me work, and you can just tell, you can feel it.
Yeah.
He wants to say something, but he's not going to say it. But we know he's going to say it. And I don't say a word. I keep working. I scribe my lines on my log that I need to cut. And then I take my contraption down so I can get my chainsaw out. I can make my copes and everything where the lines are on the log. And I got my chisel out. I go to chisel my line, which is what you do so it doesn't chip out when you cut it with a chainsaw.
Oh, you chisel it first?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I get my chisel out. I go to chiseling my line. And Ike can take no more. Why don't you use that goddamn chainsaw sitting there? It'd be a hell of a lot faster. We got things we got to do. You need to go away. Just go somewhere else, Ike.
Oh.
Yeah.
I've worked with your dad enough down at Aguila to understand exactly what you're talking about. Yeah. But there's I'm not saying it's wrong, but it's fast this way, you know, and yeah, we were working on that hot walker he had down there one time, and it's like, Ike, somebody's gonna die here, you know.
We talk about it here all the time. There's Ike luck, like some of the things that he did here that still exist that should not work. Like my brother-in-law is a good electrician. He has no idea how half this shit's wired. He'll just scratch his head and say that shouldn't work. But guess what? Ike did it. Still working.
Yeah. He's a get her done sucker,
yeah.
You know. And I never knew your grandpa, but to listen to Ike's, we all are. We're exactly what we're raised to be, with a few exceptions, and some tempering here or there. But we are what we were raised to be, and I listened to your dad talking about how he grew up, and he's exactly what he was raised to be.
Yeah. All right, so we got to get back to Craftco, Sheridan.
Okay. So where do you want to go?
Well, I think where we were is you'd quit the feed mill.
Left the feed company.
You're buying a fencing company.
Got into that, and it was okay, but there was a definite the way I looked at things and the way they looked at things were different. I was eager to get to build and to grow and to this and that, and it was a pretty comfortable deal the way they had it. They were making good money, and they spent a lot of money. Steve's dad was big into the steer open Calcutta thing. He spent a lot of money chasing steer opens, and And part of it was there was a group of these guys, and I don't know if you're old enough to really remember when that was in its heyday, but these guys went, and they weren't ropers. None of them were ropers, but they played the Calcutta game, and they knew the ropers. And I mean, it was nothing for them to spend $25,000 or $30,000 a weekend on a Calcutta. Mm-hmm. And they spent a lot of money. They could win a lot of money. They could lose a lot of money.
Yeah.
But it was the game. It's
gambling.
They drank hard, and they were gambling, and they were somebody. Okay. Mm-hmm. In their circle, they damn sure were somebody.
Yeah.
It wasn't a circle that I couldn't afford it. At that point in my career, I had no interest in gambling, even a nickel. I didn't have a nickel to gamble. And so it was amicable, but there was a parting of the ways after 2.5 years or so. It wasn't going to work. Mm-hmm. And so I got out whole. I didn't make anything. I made my wages, but I got out intact, didn't lose anything. And there had been a guy after me the whole time I worked at the feed company that he was a fabricator, welder fabricator, and he'd wanted me to go to work for him. And I thought, well, I'll talk to him. And he was installing sprinkler systems, center pivoted sprinkler systems. And he said, well, I'm going to hire you, and I'm going to send you to school, and you're going to start selling those pivots, and that's what you'll be doing. Well, that isn't the way it went. And I was helping put them together, and I was working in the shop, but I wasn't a fabricator at all. This guy he was an artist. He could do anything, do it really, really well, and never get dirty. I mean, honest to God, Wade, he'd work in that shop all day and just looked like he just walked out of church. And I can get dirty in church. Mm-hmm. And he didn't like that about me, that I was dirty, and I drank far too much water. I sweat too much. and anyway, that was a train wreck. But again, I learned a lot about how not to do business from that man. And that didn't last very long at all. 6 months maybe. And I weighed 145 pounds when I went to work there, and weighed 120 when I left. I couldn't keep food down. It was killing me. I'd always been the best hand. I was the best there was wherever I was. I was it. And there I was a failure. And I couldn't deal with it. I couldn't do anything right. I cut some used pipe down on the Powder River. There was about 100-foot section of used pipe that was just drug off in the timber. And I had to build a siphon, the ends of this siphon. And so I needed 2 sections out of that pipe that were about 12 or 13 foot long. And he was gone. He left me to build these. And like I said, I wasn't a fabricator. So I had to hook on. He had a truck with gin poles, and I hooked on, winched that out onto bare ground where I could cut it without setting the whole damn Powder River on fire. It was August and drier than a bone. And he got back the next day, and I hadn't eaten anything, but I'd got those buggers. I didn't weld anything out, but I had them fit and tacked, and I had certain angles I had to meet, and the joints had to be just such, and it was kind of entertaining in a way. It was kind of the last straw, but it was entertaining. So he comes, and he won't talk to me. Hasn't talked to me now for several weeks. And first thing he does, he goes, gets a protractor, sets it up, looks at the drawings. Spot on, dead nuts. So then he goes, gets a welding rod, and he starts through my joints where I'd beveled all this, and I had to have the right gap, and I'd agonized over these, but they were dead nuts also. He stands up, and he goes, shoves that welding rod back in the cannon, and he's walking around, and pretty soon he jumps up and throws his cap on the ground, and I said, I knew you'd come up with something. I said, what is it? He said, what in the hell did you cut that pipe off that end of that? This was used pipe. And I said, excuse me? He said, you cut that off this end. I said, I'll tell you what I'll do. I said, I'll go get that truck. It's going to take me about 45 minutes, but I'll skid that whole son of a bitch out here. I'll turn her around and skid her back in there, and you won't know which end I cut it off of. I said, pipe, as far as I know, and this is old used shit anyway. But I said, you had to have something. So are you got it out of your system now? You know, can we go to work? And, but he was just crazy. But he was really good at what he did, and I learned a lot. And the other thing I learned from him that served me better than anything is he was never at the shop when somebody came to pick up a job. Here's the paperwork. Get a check. I'll see you tomorrow. They should be here sometime this morning or sometime this afternoon. And invariably, they'd come in, and I don't know what the bill would be. Maybe it was $2,700, and they would just lose their mind. I was told this was going to be $1,500. I said, excuse me. I don't know anything about any of that. I just work here, and he told me, here's your paperwork, get a check. And it was every time. And I learned, if you give somebody a price, honor the price. If it didn't work, let them know that if we do this again, it's going to be $2,700 or whatever. But I told you this is what it was going to be. And that lesson served me very well for 40 years.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
It's just good business.
Yeah, it is. And people understand. Now, if you're working on a repair job or something and you get into it and you find something you couldn't see, just call them up.
Yeah.
They'll come in, they'll look at it, and they'll understand perfectly why things aren't what they were, you know? But you don't, if you give somebody a price on new fab, you stick with it.
Basic integrity.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It's just, don't steal the sheep you sold and honor the price you quoted. You know?
All good lessons.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, that guy that was the sheep man. We were going to college and we stopped at there's a little bar in Manderson there. If you could see over the bar, they'd sell you beer, and been buying beer there for years. And we stopped one night. We were wintertime, dark as hell, and we stopped to get a case of beer for the road back to Casper. And I walked in, and the bartender, I told him what I wanted, and he set it up, and he said, it's been taken care of. And I said, what do you mean? He said, well, somebody's taking care of that. I said, who, Leroy? He said, well, just there's a guy in the back. I said, no. If I'll know who's buying the beer, if I'm paying for it, or I'll know who's paying for it. But I'm not. This ain't working. So I said, well, there's the guy in the back. Well, I looked, I haven't seen this guy now for a couple of years, and he was not a big guy, dark complected, good looking guy, and he was really proud of his teeth. He brushed his teeth a lot, and I mean they were as white as the letters on that shirt, and they glowed from a long ways away, you know. And I look back and I see these smile, and he comes up there and he said, "Let me buy that beer." I said, "No." I'll buy the beer. He said, "You're going to school, aren't you?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "You don't have any money." I said, "I got enough money for that beer." He said, "Let me buy it." I said, "Dick, how long do I live with you?" "Well, quite a while." I said, "Yeah." And I learned some things. And one of the things I learned is when you're buying, somebody's about to get screwed. And I don't have anything I can afford to lose right now, so I'm buying the beer. Didn't insult him in the least.
Yeah.
But it was a fact. And I don't know what I was going to lose, but he had something in mind or he wouldn't have offered to buy the beer. Mm-hmm. But that's the kind of people, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, if he extends his hand, just back straight away. Don't turn around. Just back straight away, smile, wave, and go. But, yeah, those are the two biggest, those lessons from those two people were the biggest ones. Plus everything that my mentor had taught me. That's what enabled us to succeed, I think. Mm-hmm. And then just that community, Wade, and again, I think because of the people that we'd met, that Ferris saw to it that we met when we started having kids and they started getting into the music, and people supported our kids like crazy. I mean, they used to rent the theater in the summertime when JT was probably, I think Mitch was a sophomore in high school, so JT was probably in the 7th or 8th grade, and Dave somewhere there in the middle. Dave is 2 years older than JT and 4 years younger than Mitch. And but they would rent the theater, and their mom's always been, she had a knack for this. And then Mitch was in a I don't know what they called it, but it was like a traveling ambassadorial group with the University of Wyoming. And then Dave got into it later too when he was in school. But they learned a lot about shows and music and this and that. Well, they decided they were going to do a show. And I don't know if you ever saw, but they did for years. They did the Wild and Woolly Wow show, and it ran for 5 weeks, 5 nights a week. And they put themselves through college doing that. And but people would come back. People would come buy a ticket, and then they'd come back 3 and 4 times to see that show. They'd go to Gillette and get people and bring them. They'd go, I mean, it was just the support that community gave to our kids was unreal. And I guess I would say I don't even know that it was deserved. I mean, they did a great job. It was a great show, and they worked very hard at it. But I mean, it wasn't like we were somebody special that deserved anything. Mm-hmm. But they came out for our family, and I can't say enough about that community. And that's why my wife and I we never had treasure, but we had time and energy, and hopefully some ability to kind of help grow things and see things along. But that's why we've given as much. I mean, she's directed musical theater for over probably 35 years, and used to do 2 a year. It takes about 4.5 months each. And the time I put in the while, and it was just for love of the community. It wasn't because you were getting anything out of it. Well, the first few years I was on the committee, I don't think it cost more than $3,500 a year to be on that committee. I mean, there was no travel money. Yeah. There was, I mean, it was just, but you did it because it needed to happen.
To benefit the community.
Yeah, absolutely. To give back to those that had given us so much. Mm-hmm. And yeah, it's a special place. It really is. I think that's what led your folks there.
Yeah. Well, I guarantee it's the community and the people.
Yeah.
Yeah. They lived in Cody for a long time. The community changed. People were different. Moved here. Small community, good community, but influenced by Billings and as many outsiders as anywhere in the world.
Yeah.
And then just worked out to where they had more friends and that they knew over there from working for you guys for the years they had to where that was their community.
And I want to give credit where credit's due on that deal too. Tracy Swanson was the one that influenced the change. We knew we had to make a change because what we were doing as far as contractors was not working to our benefit in the least. But Tracy said, I know a guy. And your dad came over, and I'll never forget that. We had a meeting at the Golden Steer, and he laid out what it was going to be, and how we never looked back, you know? And I remember he said, because he wasn't charging us much, we didn't have any money. Mm-hmm. Didn't have anything. And he said, we're in this together. He said, we'll get ours. And I hope that y'all feel like that you finally got to where you're getting it, because your dad, do you remember when we tried the fourth perf the first time, and it was going to be on a Sunday afternoon or a Saturday afternoon, I think, and then a Saturday night perf? It was a disaster, okay? And it shouldn't have been, because everybody thought those grandstands, they would just die in there. Mm-hmm. And the other grandstands weren't there then. But those sitting in those grandstands, once the sun gets over, it can be 1:00 in the afternoon. It feels like they're air conditioned.
Yeah.
That aluminum and the concrete and everything, man, it's cool in there. It's nice. But people were afraid of it, and they wouldn't come to an afternoon performance. And I mean, your dad and mom basically fronted the whole damn cost. I mean, we bought specialty acts and we did things, but it was, I think the lion's share of the financial burden ended up on your folks, but it didn't work. But with no hard feelings, tried it, but we just kept going, and it just kept getting better and better and better and better. And I'm very proud. I don't know what influence I had, but I'm very proud of what we were able to do during the time that I got to be part of that.
So what about kind of tell the story about your growth, and kind of like we were talking about rodeo committees
Okay.
a little while ago, but you took it from next to nothing, rodeo that was going to die or maybe should have been dead, to what it is now, which is one of the, I believe it's top 25
I
in
think
the
it was
world.
top 20 last year, if I'm not mistaken.
And just so everybody hears this on here, it's the Sheridan YO Rodeo.
It's so when Tracy Swanson recruited me to be on the committee, and I hope he doesn't regret it, but anyway, he was responsible for that, and then we were, and it doesn't make any difference. It's public knowledge, but Survey that was our contractor. And what we did for Mike was we fed everything for about 10 days for a 3-day perf, and then he'd haul all the good ones to Casper. And we never did get to buck the good ones. And he had some. We didn't get to see him. And we were just, it wasn't working for us. Nobody came. We didn't have any contestants to speak of. We damn sure didn't have a crowd. If we could get 800 people on Saturday night, we had a crowd. 800.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Anyway, Tracy said, we're making the switch. And so we contracted with your folks, and it was absolutely incredible to me how fast things started to happen. The first thing, and your dad was in a position not a whole lot unlike where you're at right now. He was young, he was eager, he was ambitious, and his breeding program was on the same kind of curve yours is, just going. And contestants just started showing up. Well, as soon as the contestants started showing up, it wasn't that word spread quickly, and then the people started to buy tickets, and then the sponsors came in that order. And it didn't take very long, and we had a rodeo. And I guess being who I am, who I was, I got to throw a couple friends a little bit under the bus, but the first time I went to the convention, I went with Tracy and Charlie Jorgensen, and we went to the trade show for about 30 minutes, and that was the only convention, and we did. They played some cards, and I didn't, but and I think, and
I'm sure you made some good connections, though.
We made some connections, and I kept going back, and again, this is where, Billy and Marva were footing the bills for this deal, but I would go back and I would sit in there and I just listened. And I'd take some notes and I'd listen, and I'd take some notes and I'd listen, and about the third or fourth year that I'm there, it's like I don't have to take notes anymore because it's the same ones we did 3 years ago and 2 years ago and last year. Nothing's changing. So then I started getting more involved and asking questions and why and this, that, and the other, and I kept getting more involved and more involved and more involved, and made more connections and more connections, and I think for the most part they were healthy for the while. PRCA wasn't always glad to see me come, but
yeah, you're not one of the most popular people with the PRCA.
No, I'm not, and I think it's better now. But I was not, and it wasn't. I wasn't after anybody. I just wanted. We just needed. We got to change the way we're doing things. we've been doing it for 75 years, yeah, and it's not working very well. Now we've been doing it for 85, and it's still not working very well. But there's got to be a better way. And I ask questions, and I wouldn't. People are afraid in a group like that to stand up and say something. Once you stand up, then people will stand up and say, "Yeah, I agree," or whatever. But they won't get up. And I don't know if there's anybody now doing the getting up. I don't know. I don't have a ticket to that anymore, so I can't even be in the room to watch.
Mm-hmm.
But that concerns me because I think it needs to happen. I maintained my own membership in ARC because there's a couple things that I want to try to influence and get done.
And ARC is the American Rodeo Committee?
No, the Association of Rodeo Committees. Okay. And when I first got involved with that, this was another brainchild of Keith Martin's. Keith and I were never friends. I didn't like the way he did things. I didn't have any respect for him, and I don't think he has any for me either. But he's not a bad guy, but I think at that point, he was a self-serving fellow. And I think it was more about how it would, in my opinion, how it would serve Keith and how it would serve the organization or the industry as a whole. And I looked at ARC as his baby. And Gary Williams, do you know Gary Williams from Tucson?
I don't think I do.
Okay, he died a couple years ago. When Gary and I first met, it was not good. It wasn't good at all. By the time he died, we were friends. And anyway, we were at a meeting in Omaha. They'd established the tour, okay? And the tour was starting to work. And that tour was ideal for rodeos like what we were then, because you didn't have enough money to really draw the contestants. I mean, we were drawing contestants, but you wanted more and you wanted better, but you didn't have a hook, something to bring them in. Well, the tour, the way we all understood it as committees, was you enter. There were 8 or 9 tour rodeos, but if you entered 7 of them, you didn't have to win at 7 of them. But if you entered 7 of them, you qualified for the tour finals, 1 in Puyallup and 1 in Omaha. And if you didn't qualify, you didn't go. Well, there was pretty good money at the tour finals, and it could people on the bubble, it could make a tremendous difference. I mean, you could move from 19th to in. If you could hit a lick at those 2 rodeos, you were probably going to make it to the finals. So it's starting to work, and we're excited about it. And ARC has a convention in Omaha, which they did every year. And this year, there's going to be a special meeting for the tour rodeos. Well, we all showed up, and your dad went with me that year. He and Zane, the 3 of us, went together, and we're standing. They had the regular meeting, and then they had the tour meeting, and we're standing out in the hall waiting for them to open the room for the tour meeting, which was supposed to happen at 12 o'clock. And John Davis comes out. I struggled with John a little bit too. And he said, "Well, we're not having that meeting." And I said, "Excuse me?" I said, "Everybody here came for this meeting, but we're not having it. But I'll tell you what, if you want to, you can come into that one." And it was not a good thing. Everybody was really hot. And we went in there, and that's when the day I met Gary. And Gary had been installed by Keith as the president. And Keith was from San Antonio and Gary's from Tucson. I mean, they knew each other. And I saw Gary as a puppet. And that meeting didn't go well. And there was a lot of animosity and fur flying in there. And that might be where I started making
your name and
the worst
rodeo?
of my enemies. Yeah. And not that was not my goal. But again, somebody's got to say something. And I did. And as it turned out, they had jerked, and nobody knew, but they'd jerked the tour. And Justin and Wrangler were sponsoring the tour, and they'd never talked to them either. So they just pulled the plug. And so that's when Billy decided, well, we're going to do something. And I started trying to put together our coalition, for lack of a better term. But there were 6 rodeos that got in deep, and when we worked really hard. But it was Logandale, Clovis, Red Bluff, Redding, Prescott, Sheridan, and who? Oh, there's one more, Billy. Anyway, there were, and we went to work and tried to develop some strategies and things to work, and we weren't getting anywhere. And I remember one year, we didn't sign up to send anybody to the ARC convention, and they called me. Somebody did, and I said, well, I think that in fairness, I will call Gary and talk to him. And so I called him up and I said, Gary, you're going to have to convince me that there's a reason for us to come to this, because I said, all I see when I look at ARC is a rah-rah squad for the PRCA. I mean, they just wave the pom-poms and jump up and down and say, go PRCA, and that's not what this should be about. And I said, I see it as a puppet organization of Keith's. And he said, well, I can tell you that the worm has started to turn. And I said, really? He said, yeah, it has. And I don't know if they'd started to come apart. Personally, I got the feeling that maybe that was what was happening. But he said, come here, you can see. So I went and I could see. And I think, in my opinion today, that ARC, if there's a vehicle by which we can instill some change, I think that it's swinging in the direction that it can be the vehicle to impart some change. And there's a couple things. One in particular that I really want to see happen. And I tried this with the PRCA, and I think by then maybe their taste in their mouth for me was such that it didn't matter what I put on it; it was bitter. Mm-hmm. And fair enough. I mean, I'd been hard on them.
Yeah.
But the convention is great. It's a convention, but it's a party, and it's built around the Super Bowl. Okay, it's the finals, and it's a joyous time, and everybody finds out, they give the financial report and they do this, but you don't get anything done. It's not an atmosphere in which you can get anything done, like moving forward, making some changes or adjustments or whatever. So my thought was, let's do 2 off-site meetings a year. And at that time, we'll do one in Omaha after the tour finals. Everybody's there, or a lot of people are there, and everybody could be there if there was a reason. And the other one, let's do it after the National Western, and let's do it in Colorado Springs. Do it on the PRCA's home turf. And the way we'll format it is we'll pick 1 or 2 topics only. We're not going to try to solve everything, but we will canvass those involved prior to both the PRCA and the committees, and we'll come up with these 1 or 2 subjects, and we'll have those nailed down, a month and a half or 2 months, 3 months prior to the meeting, so that everybody's got time to work on it. They don't have to drop something else to do this, but we can come up with our proposals, and we'll meet for 2 days. And the first half of the first day, the committees will present to the PRCA their side on whatever these issues are. And then the second half of that day, the PRCA will present to the committee their side. Then we'll take the next morning, 4 hours the next morning, and we'll go to our specific groups, and we'll try to work with these and hammer out something, a compromise, because we know that that it's going to be a compromise. It's always going to be a compromise. And then that afternoon, we come together with those and collectively try to figure out maybe not a solution, but 1 or 2 steps forward, if not a solution, towards a solution in pertaining to that issue. So, took it to Carl Stressman in 2013. Called him and said, Carl, would you meet with this group of committees, just representatives of them, prior to the convention? He said, yeah, I will. I don't think he was very excited about it, but he agreed to do it. So we went and had a meeting at his suite and presented this plan.
Real quick, was there any rodeos involved that were not PRCA sanctioned rodeos already?
Not in this endeavor.
Okay.
These were all tour rodeos.
Okay.
That were after they'd abandoned the tour, then those of us that were in that hallway that day, that's kind of, we formed a bond, I guess.
Lit your lanterns and got your pitchforks.
Yeah. Okay. And so this was one of our first reaches into trying to make some changes. And so Carl listened to us and he said, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll take it to the board and I'll get back to you and I'll give you an answer before January 31st as to what we're willing to do. So January 31st came and went, and February came and went, and March came and went, and I called him and I said, Carl, we're waiting for that answer that we were expecting. And he said, okay, he said, he hadn't taken it to the board, I don't think. He said, I'll get back to you. So he did, and he said, we will meet with you at the annual meeting in March in Kissimmee. That was the first year that they'd moved the
Ram finals.
The Ram finals to Florida.
Yeah.
And I think the board, and I'm not blaming this on Carl, I think the board said, well, if we do it down there, they knew the California rodeos couldn't send anybody.
Yeah.
I mean, they're up to their eyeballs in prep right then. I mean, it's D-Day for those guys. And so I talked to our committee and I talked to the other committees and I said, we'll go. Zane and I'll go. So we went down and we presented at the meeting. They gave us some time and I'd been through this. I'd given it to Zane probably 4 times in the last day and a half, trying to get to where I could look at people and cover everything. And so we went through it, laid it out, and Keith's first reaction, we said, well, you guys don't use the avenues for complaint you have now. And I said, Keith, this has nothing to do with complaints. We're not grinding axes here. We want to have a seat at the table in how we determine our way forward. We want to help shape the future. This is not about complaining. This is about proactive stuff,
Constructive criticism.
Yeah, let's figure out. Let's work together to figure our way forward. And well, he just didn't see how it was going to work. And Hal Burns was still part of the deal. And Hal met with. We got together with him before the performance that afternoon out at the arena, and he said, "This is never going to fly." He said, "It won't work." He said, "Why? Why wouldn't this work?" And basically, what we got was, well, it's not our idea. And well, take it and sit on it, make it your idea. I don't know, but there's a resistance to giving the committees what I think is their rightful seat at the table. The committees are, this is my opinion, and I've been very vocal about this. The committees are to rodeo what the individual owners are to the NASCAR teams. That's where the money comes from.
Mm-hmm.
They put up the money. They take on all the production expense. The PRCA doesn't really produce much of anything. I don't know how they're what do they call it? The NFR
Open.
Open. I don't know if they produce that, or if they've got now the Colorado Springs, what was the Pikes Peak Committee to produce it. I don't know how that works, but I'm going to make another effort through ARC to try to breathe some life back into that concept. And that's why I maintained an individual ownership, so I at least have a seat at that table. I think it's important, and I think it's viable. I think it's a reasonable, effective idea. And if it's not, then let's tweak it till it becomes one and do something so that the people that put up the money and take on the risk have got at least some say in where we're going, which at this point, they don't have any.
Yeah.
And that's my biggest, I guess my biggest axe to grind. And I don't want it to be perceived as that. I would like to think of it as a progressive idea to move forward. And I don't know, but there's all different faces down there. There's the people that I knocked heads with for so long, none of them are there. And so I'm hoping that maybe they would at least entertain it, look at it for what it is, say, maybe this has merit, or maybe this part of it has merit. But there's no time to meet as collectively as committees with the PRCA. And I think and I've been promoting and advocating for tiered rodeo for a long, long time. And that's like beating your head against the wall. But I think in order for us to succeed and thrive into the future, something of that effect has got to take place. Every other sport does it.
Yeah.
Every other sport. We're the only ones that don't. And we cling to our ways because we've done it for 85 years. And to me, that's not a good enough reason to cling to anything. You can't do what you did 15 years ago. I can't do what we did 5 years ago. Things have changed, and we have to adapt.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping that there's a willingness with this current administration to listen, at least, and entertain the possibility of something like that. But when we were talking about George Taylor, and when George first got there, and I first heard him speak at our convention in Reno, and I came home, told Marv, I said, I'm going to work for that guy. I don't know how or what, but he's saying all the things that so many of us have been saying for so long, and he didn't last. And I don't know, I heard things that he didn't deal well with the people on the floor and on the ground in Colorado Springs, that was not good. I don't know anything about that. I just know that his vision and his history as somebody that was a builder of things excited me. And one of the better friends I had that was on the executive committee or on the board, the PRCA, said, well, he's got to go. He said, he's not a cowboy. And I said, that's what most of us really like about him, is that he's not a cowboy. No offense, but we've been doing this the cowboy way forever, and there's got to be some different thought put into it. You know, he understands marketing and he understands building but he was not to be. He wasn't a cowboy, and they were going to get rid of him, and they did. But we've stayed friends, and I like the guy.
Yeah,
I think he's a straight shooter, and he's smart, you know. But he didn't come from the right background to pass the litmus test or whatever it was, that when they dipped the paper in the fluid, it didn't come out the right color. And I think I truly think that's what brought about his very early demise as far as being in that position.
We were talking about rodeo committee structure.
Yeah.
And the people on rodeo committees. This is the same subject.
It is.
Just on a bigger scale. And what we basically came up with was that people are hesitant to become rodeo committee members because they don't know anything about rodeo, but they understand a fan's perspective. or a ticket buyer's perspective, which is the most important part.
And maybe they aren't even good at that, but maybe they know marketing.
Yeah.
Maybe they know, maybe they've got their fingers in the beer and alcohol business, and they really understand that, or the hospitality business, and they really understand that. There's the arena. You can cover that arena with 2 or 3 guys that savvy what's going on.
Absolutely.
You've got people contracted that you do not need a whole freaking room full of cowboys. In fact, the worst thing, in my opinion, you can have is a whole room full of cowboys. You need the marketers, the hospitality people, this diverse skill set and experience set, and you don't want them all poured out of the same damn pitcher.
Yeah.
And the other thing, it's a lot of work. And I think it's probably fair to say that in just about every community that puts on an event like that, it is the biggest, if not one of the biggest events of the year. And people want to be able to partake in the event.
In the community.
In the community. As a committee member, you don't get to do that.
Yeah.
You're part of it. You're there, but you can't partake in all the things that are going on. I mean, like the parade at our rodeo. The parade is a big deal in Sheridan, and the parades are a big deal in Cody. They've got 2 of them, I think, and Cheyenne's got 1 or 2 a day, and their parades are a big deal. But if you're the rodeo part of that, you're going to be rodeoing, okay? And you got to be okay with it. You're not going to get to go to the carnival, or you're not going to get to go to the parade or whatever.
Or spend time with your family or friends.
No, you're not. And that's another thing. It's a sacrifice, not just for you, but for your family, and especially in that regard. And you and they have to be okay with it. I mean, it's because that's what it is. It's a commitment, and I loved it. I mean, there were a couple of us that we ate, breathed, and slept that event, and Zane still is. Okay, but it didn't matter what it took. We'd figure out a way to find the time or the energy or whatever that it was going to require of us to get it done, and never felt like we'd missed anything, you know. But it was our community, and the thing was there for a while. It was growing at such a rate. I mean, we had committees from all over wanting to come see what the hell was going on in Sheridan. I mean, Fort Worth sent a delegation. We want to know what's happening up there, you know, because we were on this trajectory. It was just going, and it was all the pieces. It was the contractors we had, and it was the dedication we were trying to get the best contract people, and the community bought in. That was the biggest single factor, I think, in the remarkable growth rate that the Wild Rodeo experienced. And I gotta tip my hat and kind of swallow my pride here a little bit to Doug Meyer for the Gold Buckle Club.
Yeah.
I thought the Gold Buckle Club had never float. That was the best thing that ever happened, because all of a sudden it was the community's rodeo. And I've always said, it's not our rodeo. We're just stewards. We're just sheep herders here in this deal. You know, they trust us to keep everything gathered up, but it's not our rodeo. It's theirs.
Yeah.
But this is how they felt. The first year that after the Gold Buckle Club was in place, and then maybe I put that somewhere I should have. When I got back from the convention, that was the first year we were nominated as the large outdoor rodeo of the year, which, by the way, will never happen. But anyway.
Thanks to Billy Kraft.
That's a whole nother story. Well, no, it may be. Thanks to Billy Kraft. And But when I got back, people I didn't even know would come up and stop you on the sidewalk and say, how'd we do? How did we do?
Mm-hmm.
We're cooking now.
Yeah, it's just like a sports team. You follow your sports team.
Yes.
Support your community.
And it's still going.
Yeah.
There's that club, because of physical limitations, is limited to 250 members.
Okay, Gold Buckle Club.
Gold Buckle Club.
Wait a minute. Before we talk about the Gold
Okay.
Buckle Club, I want to go way back in our conversation to where you paid us a giant compliment saying that we were mostly the reason why you guys went from where you were to where you are.
Yep.
I'm going to turn that compliment down a little bit because Ike was the person that you guys needed to help grow you, right?
Yeah.
That's fact. Livestock quality is great, but I don't want somebody to listen to this and think that our rodeo sucks. We're going to fire the guy we got now as a stock contractor and go get a different one, and that'll solve everything.
Okay. Now that's no.
That cannot be construed as a solution to anything.
Not
And
at
there's a
all.
lot of rodeos that do because that's their biggest expense. They think, oh, we're going to fire this guy and get that guy, and then like a light switch, it's going to change everything. That's not why your rodeo grew. Your rodeo grew because of the help of Ike and because of the individuals you had on your board.
Correct.
Okay.
And the decisions that were made, again, we touched a little bit ago, we had some knockdown dragouts in there in our board meetings. But when we came out of there, whether you were, didn't matter which side you were on, when you came out, you were going with the majority decision.
Yeah.
And we did that very, very well. Nobody ever knew that there was any dissension.
Yeah.
In order for a board to be effective, it's got to have some. So they should have known, but they didn't see it.
Yeah.
Okay, you couldn't see it. It was put away. But yes, and again, Tom Ringley and I, when Doug proposed this Gold Buckle Club, it's like, hell, that boat will never float. I mean, people aren't going to spend that kind of money to do. Boy, oh boy, we couldn't have been more wrong.
Absolutely. And what is the Gold Buckle Club?
The Gold Buckle Club is similar in a way to a country club, but what it is a collective sponsorship. People pay dues. They pay an entry fee or a initiation fee and then annual dues to the Gold Buckle Club, and the Gold Buckle Club is a major sponsor of the Wild Rodeo.
So it's separate from your rodeo.
Yes, it is.
It's not the rodeo committee operating it.
Has
It's
its
an
own board.
individual committee, individual business entity.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay. Now, and I have to be careful here because I've never been super involved in the management of the Gold Buckle Club, but the Wild Rodeo kind of has the final say in some of that stuff because we have to be careful and not let it get a life of its own, I guess, because we've not had experience, but we know places that have, and it got away from them, and it took on its own identity and went in a different direction than what this was designed to do. This is a chance for people that there's not always, but since the thing started to take off, the Wild Rodeo, there have been people who said, I want to help. I want to do something. Well, you can't just take money. It gets really dirty and stinky if you don't have some way to make it make sense.
And it's harder to sell if you can't justify the
Yes.
sale.
And this gave it legitimacy. You now are you are supporting the Wild Rodeo.
Yeah.
And in return, you get, I hate when they announce, okay, they get free this and they get free that. They don't get free anything.
Yeah.
Okay, there's nothing free about the Gold Buckle Club. You get some nice meals and some drinks at no additional charge. Okay, that's the way it needs to be framed. It ain't free.
Yeah.
They paying a lot of money, and the prices had to go up because it's been 20 years, and and there was never an increase. And we all know what's happened to prices in the last 20 years.
And it's expensive to cater to people.
Oh my God. And not only is it expensive, it's almost impossible to find caterers. In our little community, it's getting extremely difficult to find caterers that can handle that volume. There's some really good caterers, but by the time you get to about 200 people, they're tapped out.
Yeah.
And 200 won't scratch that mess. Not that mess, those events.
Yeah.
But the Gold Buckle Club gave John Q. everybody, I mean, the people that were able to get in, they're now owners.
Yeah.
And they look at it as that.
And they have involvement.
Yeah, they do. And then there's some that have kind of lost track and, well, I'm not getting my money's worth or whatever. But the point I was going to make, the last time I knew, there were 135 people on the waiting list.
Exactly, yeah.
So it's, people want to be part of it.
And how many members are allowed?
250.
Okay.
And it's 250 basically is 500. I mean, it's a couple.
Yeah.
You know, you and your significant other, most of it's husbands and wives but it's good for a couple.
Yeah.
And that's the way it was designed. The big parties throughout the year, they've kind of gone the wayside. You can't afford them.
Yeah.
And people just, I don't know, there's so much life going on. People don't have time. When do you do it so that people can attend? You never hit that nail right.
Yeah.
And so they're not doing that. It's more about the rodeo now and that deal, and that's upset some people. But if they don't have to stay, people that understand where it's at. There, like I said, there's 135 people begging they just want in. They just want a chance to play.
Yeah.
And but it's all been part of the transition. But yeah, I think the biggest thing, Wade, we were fortunate in that we had good committee structure. We had people that wanted to be. Were every one of them in at the same level? No, they never will be. But overall, it was a group that worked, and it represented the different areas of the community pretty well. The committee did, and it represented different areas of expertise.
Yeah. It
was not a pen full of cowboys.
Yeah.
You know, for a week everybody was a cowboy, but they weren't cowboys.
Yeah.
And that was huge. And then, like I said, once the community it is theirs, but once they realized it was theirs, then they became proud owners, and they promoted it, and they had an interest in a stake, so to speak. You know, not a financial stake. They weren't going to get anything out of it, but man, Sheridan's a phenomenal community, and now it's got a phenomenal rodeo to go with it.
Yeah.
And, you know, you look at where that rodeo ranks in comparison to the size of communities that are its peers. Mm-hmm. It's a drop in the bucket.
Yeah.
It's a little bitty place compared to most of them, you know. And some of them don't have really big populations of their own. But look at Pendleton. Pendleton sells sponsorships in Spokane, in Portland, they sell sponsorships over a huge geographic area that we can't do that. It may get better someday that we can reach farther, but that's just the way that part of the world works versus ours. And you know, you can't to compare the Wild as Pendleton. You can't do that.
But you know what they have in common is you've got the Gold Buckle Club. You've got volunteers. Pendleton's got over 1,000 volunteers that help make that work. And people have it's their rodeo. They've got a connection. They've got ownership to it.
We went, when Billy and Marlowe were inducted into the Hall of Fame, we went there for that and learned so much about just that, how their Happy Canyon thing and their Indian village, and they've got, like you said, they've got armies of volunteers. And these volunteers are generational.
Yeah.
my great grandpa was part of that, or my grandpa and my dad, my uncles, and now, and that's something that doesn't happen. That's somebody put a lot of effort into creating that atmosphere and the, just everything that allows that to be and become and to maintain.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a challenge for committees to figure out, okay, what kind of traditions can we do? I would love to see, we're sitting right next door to the Cheyenne and the Crow.
Yeah.
I would love to see a much bigger Indian presence at the Wild. And every time I bring it up, people say, well, you're never going to get them to, I mean, there's some bad blood between those two tribes.
Yeah.
But the people I talked to from both tribes, I said, is it insurmountable? And they said, no. We just got to figure out how to put it together. We got to find a place to make it happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's your biggest issue.
We have no room.
Yeah.
And but I think that can become a tourist attraction and a destination all its own.
Mm-hmm.
Not everybody wants to go to a rodeo.
Yeah.
But people are interested in history, and that's a very colorful history, and it isn't that old.
Yeah.
I mean, when you think about it, you know, we've got friends that are second generation descendants of the people that fought at the Little Bighorn.
Yeah.
I mean, not that far back.
Yeah.
And we need to be, and they need to be proud of their heritage. And that's another way that
It's the same heritage.
it is.
I mean, maybe heritage is not the right definition, going back to our previous conversation, but it's the same. It's a different culture, but it's the same culture.
It is. And it's, you know, and it's the Western way of life.
Yes, exactly.
And you know, I think back to when our early years in Sheridan, the Miss Indian America, the All-American Indian Days were there.
Mm-hmm.
And it the wheels came off of it, and it became a less than positive thing for all involved, and it just fizzled. And that's too bad, because it should be a big deal.
Yeah, that would have been cool.
Yeah, absolutely. It should be a big deal.
Yeah.
And the relay races have helped.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about them because that's one thing that, like, Pendleton has got its own identity. It's on grass. Those buck and shoots are all a different color. It's a colorful event. It's different than any other event. That's their identity. Every big rodeo, like when you ask somebody that's rodeoed their whole life, what's your favorite rodeo? They're going to say Sheridan. They're going to say Pendleton. They're not going to say the rodeo with the most added money. They're going to say the most unique, coolest event, right?
Yeah.
And you guys have got the Indian relay races that are part of your identity, which it's a different identity because of that.
And they're not a part of our identity. They are a huge factor in our identity. And I think that everybody involved now, it hasn't always been that way, can appreciate that if we didn't have the Indian relay races, the Wild Rodeo wouldn't be the Wild Rodeo.
Amen.
It's as simple as that.
Mm-hmm.
Wait, there's not a question here as, well, no. That people they buy tickets to see the relay races and they stay for the rodeo. It's kind of like people go, it's like when they talk about moving the finals out of Vegas.
Yeah.
People go to the finals. They stay because it's Vegas.
Yeah, they might not even go to the rodeo.
No, but there's things there that hold them. I mean, you know, I've not spent a lot of time in Dallas, but I can tell you I've spent enough time in Dallas to know that, hell, I can see about everything I want to see in Dallas in an afternoon.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not the same. It's not there's anything wrong with it.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the same. But the relay races are that's the color, the pageantry, and it's what sets our event apart.
Yeah.
They have the suicide race in Omak. They have different places have got like you said, it's what makes you unique.
Yeah.
You know, Cheyenne had the chuck wagon races for years that people talked about, and they're gone. And I don't know if it was an insurance liability. I don't know what brought about the demise of those. Mm-hmm. They still have them in Canada, I know.
Yeah.
But
well, they still have the rookie bronc riding.
okay, and there's things that little sideshows.
Yeah.
But for us, that I don't mind saying we're the sideshow to the damn Indian relay races,
Yeah.
not the damn Indian racers. They are our headline event. Mm-hmm. That's what makes it special.
Yeah.
And you know, it's like Kennard. Kennard is
That's something else too.
Kennard is so special in his own right, and every year there's a little bit of pushback on something Kennard said or done or whatever,
Any publicity is good publicity.
yes, it is, and you don't ever respond to it because how do you respond to it? But you can't say that about Indians. We didn't say anything about Indians. He did. He's Indian, so he can say whatever the hell he feels like saying.
Exactly.
But do you think the contestants that I know of, they are on the fence. They're not back at the trailer. Mm-hmm. They're not, when those races are running, they want to be where they can see and where they can hear Kennard.
Yeah.
Because he is, I worry about, and I'm going to make an appointment with Kennard to talk to him and interview him here in the near future, to try to interview him in the near future. But I worry about what we do when Kennard hangs his hat. Mm-hmm. Because he is so much a flavor of that event. I mean, you could put a great announcer in there, but it isn't going to be the same.
Yeah. Yeah, it really doesn't matter what's going on in the arena. Kennard might be talking about something completely different.
And probably is, and something that completely different and very inappropriate. But
entertaining.
it's entertaining.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
And like the contestants, one of my favorite things is we always load our horses way earlier than we should there, just so we get to pay attention to the relay races and listen to Kennard. But if there's a new guy there that shows up,
Contestant-wise, that hasn't seen it.
yes,
Okay.
every single year there will be a bronc rider or somebody that shows up there and said, did he just say that? Did anybody else hear that?
Yeah, they're on the edge of their seat just waiting to hear what he says.
Yeah.
You know? And, but, no, Kennard is, I think he's great. And the thing about those guys, that family, and they'll tell you, I mean, and I've had someone tell me, they said, we're not that well loved on the reservation because they're progressive. Mm-hmm. The majority, I guess, of the citizens there, they don't want to move forward. They want to be where they are, and it's tragic because the drugs and everything that are just is destroying their young people and their older people too. But it's, I just love them. But those people, that family, those are educated people. Mm-hmm. Well, Charlie spent a lot of money getting those guys in the right place, and I don't know, maybe we spent a lot of that money. I don't care, but it was money well spent as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
I mean, they've got master's degrees and MBAs, and those people are smart. And Kennard, you're an artist. You know what Kennard can do with some paint and a brush.
Yeah.
The man has got phenomenal talent. And I don't know if he's written anything, but there's no reason he shouldn't be writing.
Yeah.
I mean, he's incredible. And we've gone one time to not to the reenactment, but to the deal that Henry does where they'll take you out horseback and take you on the battlefield and give you their side of the story.
Oh, yeah.
That's a day you want to spend too.
Yeah.
It's great. The day we did, it was raining and blowing 100 miles an hour. I want to go back where I can actually hear every word he says.
Yeah.
But they're our neighbors. They're our next door neighbors.
Yeah.
There's no reason not to have them much more deeply involved, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And that's not the opinion of everybody. That's why we're a committee, you know.
Yeah.
Why I'm no longer on the committee. Maybe it's time for somebody else to, get rid of that guy.
Yeah.
Let somebody else talk for a change. But.
And Mars.
Okay, we were talking about the evolution of the wild rodeo. Sheridan has been blessed for generations now with that it's attracted people that have a lot. And they've been blessed by the fact that those people at different levels, but some of them at phenomenal levels, have just dove right into the community and the experience and invested tremendously. Mr. Forrest Mars, in the 14 years he lived there, made a huge impact in that community and a huge impact to the wild rodeo. He came to us. We didn't approach him. He came to us and said, I want to be a part of this. And he talked to us for a little while, and he said, I'll never forget, he said, we can do this two ways. He said, I can write you a check, or I can write you a check and I can teach you how to do some more of this stuff.
Man, how lucky is that?
And it took us, we had to deliberate on that for, I think it was 0.3 of a second or something before we could make a decision which way we were going to go. And that's exactly what he did. He brought people to town, and he taught us things that we never thought about, like little things, like a wrinkle in a banner. Okay? That's important.
Mm-hmm.
The cleanliness of a banner. Is there a banner tied to that fence that's missing a zip tie somewhere and it's got a sag in it? I mean, clean them before every perf. Just elevate everything you do to a much higher level and keep it there, and understand that the littlest things have a huge impact. And because of his involvement, my dad, my brothers, and I, we went to 3 NASCAR races. I'm not a NASCAR fan. I don't have anything against it, but it's loud and it's noisy and they go around and around and around. But to go to one of those events, now you talk about people that go and don't go to the rodeo. I don't know how many hundreds, maybe thousands of people show up that can't get a seat.
Mm-hmm.
But the surrounding area where all these vendors and stuff are set up, I mean, every I is dotted, every T is crossed, there's not a smudge, it's absolute perfection. And they've perfected the marketing aspect of things in their display and presentation. But Forrest Mars, the impact he had on our community and on our event are immeasurable. I had a really interesting talk with his daughter the day of his funeral. And she said Pam and Lonnie had lived there for a long time before anybody knew who the hell Pam Wright was. Nobody had a clue. They came to town. They didn't make any noise. They just bought their place and went about their business. And she told me that day, she said,
wait a minute. Who is Pam?
Pam Wright is Forrest's daughter. She is a Mars, okay? And she and Lonnie are since divorced, but she was married to Lonnie Wright, he's a county commissioner now, but they came to our community together. They're from, I don't know from where exactly, Illinois, I think. But anyway, she said, we got here and I kind of watched and we kind of integrated, and I kept telling my family, we got to get Dad out here. Dad needs to be here. Oh, he'll lose. He'll be so bored out there. And she said, no, he won't. He needs to be here. She said it took forever, but finally I got him out here. And she said, this was the greatest thing that ever happened to my dad. She said for the first time in his life, he was Forrest. He wasn't Mr. Mars anymore.
Yeah.
He didn't travel with the driver. He didn't have guards. She said one of his greatest joys was being part of the Bighorns Lions Club.
Yeah.
I mean, she said he could get in the pickup and go to the ranch at Bernie. And he did it all the time. And he just ran loose and free like he'd never been able to do this in his entire life. But here he was nobody. He was just a guy.
Yeah.
And she said he couldn't do that anywhere else. And she said that's what made this place so special to my dad, was he was just a guy.
Mm-hmm.
And he wasn't Mr. Mars or whatever. He was Forrest. Sheridan's unique in that respect too, in that it doesn't disrespect celebrity or success or whatever, but it sure as hell ain't enamored with it.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't care who you are, you can stand right in the middle of Main Street where the banks are, and they might tell you to get out of the road, but they're not gonna flock to you and overwhelm you. And people don't, like I said, there's not that they don't respect it, but you're just a guy.
Yeah.
And I think that's special. And I think people like that think it's special because they can come there and they don't have to hide. You know, I can't remember what movie they were doing. They were making a movie at Eaton's years ago, and Robert Urich was part of the cast. And he'd be in church every Sunday with his wife and kids. And our kids were little then, and we were all in the cry room together. And back when we had one, which was another subject we won't get into, but everybody knew he was there, but nobody ever said, "Boy, can I get an autograph?" or "Can I let him come, let him go?"
Yeah. Maybe an introduction. How
Yeah.
are you? How's the weather
Right.
been?
But that,
Yeah.
my wife had been involved in the theater for so long, and she said that Garth Brooks and Anthony Zerbe came one time to do a little Christmas deal. And Anthony Zerbe read the stories on the stage at the Wild Theater, and they set up some straw bales, and he did this reading, and then Garth Brooks played music behind him. And it wasn't a concert. It was more of a reading with some music. And so afterwards, they've got some merch out there, and they're available. And Marva said, Garth Brooks said, "Wow," he said, "I've never been someplace like this before." He said, usually, he said, it's just a mob. And he said, there might have been 3 or 4 people come up, buy something, and some of them would dip their hat, and most of them just walked out. And he said, that doesn't happen. She said, it's not a sign of disrespect. People that's your space. And that's how it is.
And people are grounded. Everybody's got their own identity.
Yeah.
Do you think it's still...
This is one of my biggest fears, Wade.
Yeah, me too.
Okay?
We need to quit talking about how good Sheridan is.
Yeah, we do. But we also need to talk about, I've had arguments with people because, those sons of bitches are moving to town and this and that. And I said, okay, but they're coming. Okay? And our defense has got to be that we embrace them. Mm-hmm. We get them in. Something attracted them to this in the first place. Maybe they didn't understand exactly what it was, but there was something there. So what we've got to do is we've got to not ignore them, engage them, try to figure out what their interests are, and then get them involved, steer them towards the people, whoever they are, that kind of have those interests. Maybe they want to shoot. Maybe they want to do pottery. Maybe they want to, but if whatever they want to do, if we can get them involved in the community, pretty quick they'll understand what it was that made them want to be here, and they'll be as protective of it as we need to be. Because if we lose this identity, we've lost it all.
Yeah. And that's not just Sheridan, that's the whole Western culture.
It is.
Every Montana, Wyoming, Idaho,
Yep.
All of us.
Been invaded, and not by bad people that see things way different than we do because of their way they grew up, the way they've lived, the way they've had to live, whatever. And they do. They see the world differently than we do. But something led them here. So let's figure out what it was, or figure out what we need to do to get them engaged and get them involved and let them become community members and not that son of a bitch that came from California.
Yeah.
That we can't do that.
And brought their politics with them.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because, right. And that's another reason it's so critical that we engage them. And I mean, look at Colorado, for God's sake. You know, it could be a coastal place now, the way things are down there. And got good friends in Colorado. I feel for them. I feel for my friends in California.
Yeah.
The friends I have in California, Wade, they're just like you and I are.
Yeah.
They don't have a chance.
Mm-hmm.
Because the population drives everything. Sometimes I think, man, maybe it wouldn't be wrong if Northern California seceded, because they've got their own identity. It's a different world there.
Yeah, same with Washington and Oregon,
Yes.
too. It's East and West Coast.
Yes. Yeah, you've got the coastal areas, and then you've got everything else.
Yeah.
Yep. It is. It's tough. But, and for the Forrest story is a great story about integration and what can happen.
Mm-hmm.
He became a Sheridanite.
Yeah.
You know, Sheridan didn't become whatever he was. He came in and got in both feet clear to here and just wallered in it and loved every minute of it.
Yeah.
It's a good community, and there's lots of good communities.
Yeah.
But we don't gain by shutting them. Once they're here, there's no profit in trying to shut them out. None. We got to make them be part of feel like they're part of it and understand what makes it work.
In order for them to contribute.
Yes.
Not even just financially, but
No,
just like Forrest giving you guys lessons.
Yeah.
That was, I don't know how much money he gave, but I'll bet the lessons profited more than the money.
Yeah, and use them forever.
Yeah.
You know?
Teach them how to fish.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And they're no longer part of the deal, but we will learn, and it wasn't without some pain. I mean, some of the people he brought to town, there was some struggle there going both ways. They struggled like hell with us, and we struggled a little bit with them too, but those are stories we won't get into right now. But my friend Tracy.
We'll tell one.
We'll tell one. And I love Tracy. Anyway, the first, I don't know exactly what her title was. I'm going to say like the marketing director or something. She was in charge of seeing to it that the banners were straight and that this was done and that was done and this was done and that was done. And
so this is a marketing director for Mars.
Master Foods.
Master
for Mars, yes.
Which is Mars is M&M's.
And Master Foods, Uncle Ben's Rice, Pedigree Dog Food. That's such a huge company. Anyway, but yes, that's who she was. And we were just a bunch of rednecks, I think, in her world. And we did not understand several things about her. Anyway, I thought, well, hell, if we're smart, we'll pay attention to everything she's doing. And next year when she shows up, we'll have everything done and she won't have to worry about it. And this will get to be a vacation for her. She can come out here and just have fun. Yeah, she had to have things to complain about, or she didn't have a reason to be there. So the harder you tried, kind of the worse it got. I mean, we'll have everything just ship shape. And then she couldn't correct this and correct that, because if she wasn't correcting things, she wasn't doing a job.
Yeah. Which is what drove her.
But absolutely. And she was a contracted individual with them. I mean, she wasn't necessarily under the umbrella. Mm-hmm. She had her own umbrella. And so anyhow, to this story, at that point, we hadn't gone back to back yet, so we could do the parade. And parade was kind of a fun deal, you know.
By back-to-back, you mean back-to-back slack, which
Slack,
takes up all
yes.
day, every day.
Yes. Yeah, we was still pre that. We had one section of slack, and we'd stay up all night and do it, but it was one and done. Mm-hmm. Okay. And so we were at the parade, and we would get together, and we might have some Bloody Marys before the parade got going, and we were letting our hair down a little bit, and so we had a float that year. We weren't horseback. We were on a float, and had somebody build us some bucking chutes and we put them on a flatbed trailer, and anyway, we kind of got the rodeo theme going, and she's given us a lecture about how we will not be throwing candy off the float, which we thought that's part of a parade. You throw candy off.
And it seems counterproductive when you're representing a
Candy company not to be. Anyway, if you were going to do anything, you had to walk down the side with a bucket and hand it out, which didn't seem like a hell of a lot of fun either. Anyway, she gives us quite a lecture about this, and she gets done and kind of like this, and Tracy throws and hits her with an M&M right between the frickin' eyes. I mean, he couldn't have shot it out of a gun and hit her any better. And it just kind of set the tone for our relationship with her from then on. I think she came back 3 years, and I finally wrote a letter and said, we really appreciate your support. We understand and we value everything you've done for us and our community and everything else. But if this is the price, we're out. I mean, little kids that were going to dress up and be M&Ms. Now, when we were little kids, like, I got to drive a tractor in a parade because my dad used John Deere equipment. So the John Deere dealer he'd take a half a dozen of us, and we got to drive equipment in the parade. That was a big deal. Drive a brand new tractor and riding in the parade, and then you'd usually get a hamburger when it was over and this and that. So that'd be fun, you know. These kids get to be M&Ms. Oh, no. After the first year, you could not. You had to tie those little sons of bitches up and drug them. You had to shoot them full of dope before they would. It was awful. I mean, she bitched at him and yelled at him. It was torture to be an M&M. They're hot in there, those things, for starters. And then she was just awful. And yeah, we couldn't get anybody. We need kids to be. They've heard, and they're coming. You know, she was not a happy person, and she didn't want to be a happy person. But yeah, Tracy just nailed her. And but when we heard it was going to be her last year, we thought, well, we'll buy her something, try to buy her a gift, something nice. And the girls kind of went and thought they bought her a really nice bracelet. She was not impressed. Wasn't a thank you, not a go to hell, nothing. Just let me out of here. Had enough of you people. Yeah. Don't need any more. But it's all part of the deal. And again, the differences in one part of the world from another. Where she came from, and I don't know where that was, but she probably fit right in. Mm-hmm. But the poor girl didn't fit here. And we were not very welcoming once we kind of got our feet wet there either, and just kind of bowed up and again, I guess it's kind of our way. I mean, you know, I think we can be very accommodating people, but don't try to put us in a corner.
Yeah.
We don't corner up very well. We're kind of like a cat. We sort of spit and scratch and hiss and fight back.
Yeah.
But
yeah, so most of the conversation we've had has been about growth.
Yep.
And change and transition. Talking about rodeo, talking about the ARC board, talking about the YO, talking about the PRCA. What direction do you think it needs to go to? I mean, you mentioned the tour, but
I think, in my opinion, and I'm one person, I think the most critical thing that has to happen, and I think it needs to happen sooner than later, is we've got to figure out how to tier it. and it's going to be painful. There's no easy way to do this, because I think we need, and again, this is all Billy, I think we need 3 tiers, and I think every tier has to be able to create the same excitement. Each tier has to have a finals. Each tier has to have, you've got to be able to talk the same talk at a $500 rodeo that you do at a $50,000 rodeo. This kid's setting number 2, and he is setting number 2, okay? And you got to be able to rodeo in and out of these tiers. So if you're hitting a lick, like, I mean, we all know the kids that come and their trajectories like this. The Wright boys, the calf ropers that are just burning the house down.
Yeah.
Wasey
Shala, all the rookies in the bull riding.
Those guys, you don't hold them here. They go. I mean, they start hitting the lick, and they might move through all 3 tiers in the season. They might get it done in 2 months. But also, there's a limit in the tiers, especially these upper ones, okay? So if somebody's coming in, somebody's sliding.
Yeah.
And that person has got to slide out. They don't have to quit, but you're going to be here now. Yeah. And I don't know how we're going to get this through to this society. And
what part of the society?
The contestants and to all of us, okay? When I've talked about this, there'll be a $500 rodeo somewhere in Utah. So what you're saying is the Wright boys can't enter our rodeo. I'm sorry, but that's what I'm saying. Well, that's bullshit. Okay. When was the last time they entered your rodeo? They've never been here. Okay, I understand. But if we can create the excitement at that level by having the top 15 and then the next 15 that are scrambling to get into that 15, and they're going to go to their finals in whatever, and because the announcer's got to be able to create the same excitement. We have to tier everything in my mind. We have to tier the contestants. We have to tier the stock. We have to tier the judging, because they got to have 85-point rides, and they might be doing it on a 16-point horse with us. But somehow or another, we've got to figure out how so that they can light that place up with big numbers. The
same amount of excitement.
The same amount of excitement. I don't know what the answers are, but I think it's crucial, especially in the rough stock events. We turn the wolves in on the frickin' chicks all the time. I mean, these guys anybody can pull into a $500 rodeo and take the money, and they're going to take it. Okay? This happens all the time. No. You got to leave those kids to win that money so that they can get to the next one. We starve them to death. They say, well, we've got schools. Yeah, we do. And then what do?
Yeah.
We turn the wolves in on them. No, we can't do that. It's not a recipe for success. Some of them may never get out of that level.
A lot of them don't.
No, they don't. And some of us may never make it to that level. Okay? But you've got to be able to have likes compete with likes, like they do in golf, like they do in football, like they do in all the successful sports where there's so much money involved, because it creates more sponsorship opportunities. It creates everything, but it keeps us with a steady, viable stream of contestants that right now we worry about.
Yeah.
And I don't see any answer as long as we continue to turn the wolves in on them, that we just starve them to death. Some people, it takes a lot longer for them to mature. I was talking to your dad one time about my struggles when I was trying, and I had no teachers, no mentors, no nothing. And I couldn't understand why I could ride colts and kind of pretty much knew where they were going to go. I mean, it's after a while, you kind of got a feel for things, and they didn't really surprise you that often, you know. Some of them might be more than you could handle, but you kind of had a feel for how things were going to go. And I could get on a bareback horse and everything was just a freaking blur. And it was like, why is this happening so much faster than that is? When I can think my way through that, and I can't think anything here. And your dad said, I must have got on 1,000 saddle broncs before I could ever make anything work. He said, bareback horses, easy. He said, that was natural for me. Saddle bronc horses, he said, oh my God, I struggled and struggled and struggled because it just wouldn't work. But the same thing, it was just a blur. Mm-hmm. And so there's all different levels, and there needs to be a place and even for the guys that don't make it to the bottom tier, we got to have the local associations. We got to have incubators. And that's what we lack, I think, is effective incubation. And without it, look at every other sport. I mean, look what they do with football anymore. They're starting kids this age, and it's structured, and they're taught, and they're shaped, and they're mentored, and they go up. Now there's way fewer opportunities for those. Well, maybe there's not numbers wise when you look at all, but relatively speaking, our world is not that big. And that's another thing I think is so important. And that's the other thing I want to try to do with ARC, or try to influence, is I want ARC to embrace all of rodeo. I don't want it to embrace PRCA rodeos.
Yeah.
I think the IPRA, the Indian rodeos, there's not that many of us when we take us all.
Yeah.
And in order to have some kind of a voice politically that means something, I think that's the vehicle, but I think it's got to encompass all.
Yeah. Yeah.
Those are the two things that I hope to somehow be able to influence in what days I have left with ARC.
So I got to back up a little bit.
Okay.
Everybody talks about incubating contestants, or the way a tiered system would affect contestants. What about the way it would affect rodeos and incubating rodeos? The $500 added rodeo would be able to have a great event,
Right.
with 500 added, and then they could become $1,000 event.
Yes.
And then someday maybe they would be the rodeo where the rights are required to go to.
Right.
I think that's possible. And if you don't give those rodeos a chance to grow, they're not going to grow either.
No, they're not. And
you have to feed the rodeos just like the contestants.
you have to feed. It's the industry.
Yeah.
We're talking about the industry. We're not talking about. And this is another thing where sometimes I think we lose track, is that it's the contestants or the committees or no. Mm-hmm. This is an industry. We're all gears in the same damn box, and if this transmission's going to function, we got to function. We got to mesh. And I think we get so bound up about we're cowboys or we're this or we're that. All we are, we're just little cogs in a wheel. And if we do this right, this wheel can get bigger and bigger and bigger. Maybe not the world, that might be an incorrect statement, but the country is hungry for what we've got right now. With all the division and the anger and everything, we have got a wonderful product. And the message, the Western way of life, the world needs us. The country needs us, okay? So let's figure out how to do the most amount of good with what we've got. And like you say, if we can tier this, and it's going to be, I would love to be part of it, but I don't have one answer. I kind of see where I think we need to be at the end, but how we're going to get there, I don't know, because it's going to be painful, Wade.
Drastic change.
And it's going to be painful for everybody. I mean, your business, okay? And we may well end up with tiered contractors rather than you trying to wear 14 hats.
It would help the contractors too, in my opinion.
I think it would. Because you got somebody that's starting out, okay, they can't go out here and buy it. But you start working on. You go pick up some horses and you
Yeah.
figure out what bucks and what doesn't. And again, we don't cultivate. We don't even use the word. But anything you're growing, you have to cultivate. And I think that's what we lack, is cultivation. And that cultivation isn't going to look like when you're cultivating corn or cultivating beets, but it's husbandry, as we talk about it in the livestock industry. It's shaping and determining where we need to go, and then figuring out, okay, what do we breed to get to here? What do we breed to get to here? Because it's going to change that too.
Yeah.
We're going to need to breed some 16 pointers that just come out,
We
and jump, and
we got that handled. Don't worry about
okay.
it.
But we need them. I
Yeah.
mean, because we can't have that. We got to have them just come out and get these kids score big numbers,
Yeah.
look good and feel good and gain confidence. Because that bugger just jumps out there and you can just stretch and kick and reach and be there, you know. But you can't just air them out.
What about college rodeos and high school rodeos on your ARC board?
They need to be part of it. I think all of rodeo needs to be under that umbrella. Mm-hmm. And again, that's going to be a big adjustment too, because you've got, I mean, I can't high school rodeo, that's a whole nother animal.
Yeah.
College rodeo is a little closer to pros, but the high school level, I mean, there's some contestants there that are knock your socks off. If you look at like the junior NFR and some of that stuff, my eyes get big watching some of those kids.
Mm-hmm.
But it costs a lot of money to produce a rodeo.
Yeah.
And those I don't have those answers. I don't know. But collectively, we should be able to come up with some stuff that works, or at least things we can try and then tweak till we get something that works. But we can't do, it's another frustration I've had with our industry, is we come up with an idea, and if it isn't just bearing fruit by the bushels in 3 years, we throw it out. I don't think that's the way to do it. I think you look at it, we tweak it, but it's the tour thing again, okay? It was starting to bear fruit for us on the committee level, was just starting to really work, and was helping those contestants that rodeoed enough at the tour rodeos. They were making some money. And what happened to it was the wolves again. So we need that money. No, this is not what it's about. It's about helping those guys down here, but we don't want them getting in. I mean, we're all selfish. This is the way I see us. It's about me today. Doesn't have a damn thing about us a month from now. It's me now. That's what I'm worried about.
And I believe it's getting worse.
I think that's if you can put all of our problems into one little box, I think that's the box they fit in. And nothing can survive that way.
Yeah.
You think it's getting worse?
I think it's getting worse, but now I think is a good time to talk about the ERA.
Okay. I don't know if you know how much I had personally invested in that.
No, I had no idea, but I know you supported them because it was an opportunity to make a change.
I wrote that plan. When I would go to the convention, like I said, I'd sit and listen. I'm not a socializer. Then I'd go to the parties. Meetings are over, I go to my room, and it took years, but I keep writing notes and writing notes and writing notes.
So this is the ERA Elite?
This is the ERA, and I didn't write it as that. I wrote it as a plan that I thought would work for rodeo. And as I got deeper in it, then I took it to this group of 7 committees that we were working together, and we'd kick the dog, and we'd do this and do that, and we'd tweak this and tweak that, and we finally thought we had something that had enough merit we could go with it. Took it to Larry Gold, and Larry Gold polished it up to make it look like a business plan. That's what Larry Gold did. Mm-hmm. Okay, we weren't that wasn't what we did. We just had ideas. So he kind of helped reshape it. We sent it out. Everybody gets to look at it again. Let's go. So I went to Red Bluff that year. Carl Stressman was going to be at Red Bluff, 2012. And there was a party after the rodeo at Mike Dudley's dad's house, and we were all there. And I got Carl aside, and I said, I got something I want you to look at. And I said, we've been working on this, and I'd like you to look at this, give it some serious thought, and get back. Tell us what you think. Nothing. And so then it was in September of 14, if I'm not mistaken, that Randy Bernard made the announcement that he was starting the American. And again, the same group, we got all excited. We hear about this thing. Ooh, maybe we could be qualifiers for this thing. Don't know anything about it, and we don't have a lot of time to learn because nothing's happened yet. So I called Will Rasmussen. I said, do you know Randy Bernard? And he said, yeah, I know him. I said, could you somehow arrange an introduction? He said, I can do that. So, and I don't remember even how that worked, but somehow he got the two of us together. Not physically, but got us together. And I talked to him and I said, would you consider meeting with representatives of these 7 committees sometime in Vegas, preferably before the convention? He said, yeah, I'll get back to you. So he got back and said, yeah, let's do it at such and such a day at this place, and come on, we'll talk. So we went in and we said, we want to know, we want you to get more in depth with your plan and how this is going to work. And then we just want to know if maybe there's a place in there for us. So he started to lay it out, and he had a clear vision, and his vision was to go to rural America, and by rural, he said, I'm talking about a brown county. We didn't know what a brown county was. The county with less than 60,000 people in it is, somebody has relegated counties into colors by size, population, not size. He said, I'm not interested in any county that's got any more people in it than that. And he said, I'm going to go out, and he said, I've been charged with developing RFD TV. That's what I was hired to do, was to develop this. And he said, I'm going to do it with rodeo. That's how I'm going to get it done. But I'm going to go out and I'm going to create events. We're going to get names, put our name on these events, and people are going to compete at these events to qualify to get to a series of quarterfinals, semifinals, and the American. Well, it became very clear to us pretty early on that we didn't have a place in there. We liked his concept, thought it was great, but we didn't have a place, and we were too big to fit for what he wanted to do. We tipped our hat to his plan, though. So when the meeting was over, I asked, I said, you guys okay if I give him this? And they said, oh yeah. So I got him aside and I said, I want to give you this. And I want you to tell him the same thing I told Carl. Read it, look at it, think about it. Dice, chop, whatever. Get back to me. And so nothing happened. And I called him in August. And I said, Randy, I've kind of been waiting to hear from you about that plan that I gave you when we were in Vegas last fall. And he said, I'll tell you what I can tell you. He said, you need to get with Trevor and Tony Garitano. And I said, okay.
Trevor Brazil
and Tony Garitano. And so that was in August. So in September, I go to the art convention. It's still in Omaha. And I run into Trevor and Bobby Mote in the airport. And I said, Trevor, I talked to Randy Barnard a month or so ago, and he said, I need to get with you and Tony Garitano. And he said, oh, what we're working on, he said, has nothing to do with the PRCA. I said, I know exactly what you're working on. Anyway, I said, I want some feedback if I can get it. Nothing came. Then in Clovis is what, like second week in April or something like that?
End of April.
End of April. Okay. So I get a call from Vince Janko maybe 2 weeks before their rodeo. And he said, Tony Garitano and whatever, they're coming to Clovis to make a presentation before our rodeo. He said, you might want to be here. I said, I will definitely be there. So again, it's kind of the same group of rodeos that we'd been working together that he'd reached out to. And there were other people in there. Anyway, John Growney had helped us a lot too when we were working on this. He's got a pretty good marketing mind, and anyway, he's been helping us kind of shape this and put us together. And so I'm sitting kind of across an aisle that got folding chairs set up, but he's sitting right to my left. And they get up and they start with this big slide presentation, PowerPoint, I guess you call it, through there. And it's like, holy shit. I said, John, fucking word for word. I mean, this is that fucking plan that we've been working on. So I got extremely excited, and they told us what they were wanting to do and trying to gather rodeos. And, they got, I think 5. But they made some really, really critical freaking mistakes. And the biggest one was when they decided, and I don't know whose decision it was, but then they were going to draw a line in the sand between them and the PRCA. That was suicide. And you knew it the minute you heard it that no, you can't divorce yourself from this. It's got to be, we got to figure out how to draw it together, And I was just sick, but we were successful. We didn't make a bunch of money, but we didn't lose any money. We made a few $1,000s on that rodeo
with the ERA,
with our ERA event that was Labor Day.
Yep, in Sheridan.
And I think we just knew better how to do it.
Yeah, maybe.
I remember your dad telling me, because he was their kind of their production guru. Tommy, he was the mechanics guy. You make sure the pens are right. You help with this and that. Tommy Joe had a lot to do with a lot of the promotion and stuff, and he's kind of I don't know what I want to call him, but he was a student of your dad too at one point. Your dad's had a lot of impact on our industry, but he said the discussion was because he was not going to be able to be in Sheridan. He had a conflict. And this was the greatest compliment that was ever paid to Zane and I. And he said, they're all bound up about who the hell's going to be there. And he said, I told him, get the hell out of their way. They know what to do. Mm-hmm. And your dad taught us. And we tried to be good students. And we'd piss him off, and it's which everybody can do. But we tried to learn, and we felt that he taught us really well. And we had all the confidence in the world in our ability to dot every I and cross every flippin' T that there was to be crossed to produce an event. And again, we had our community behind us.
Yeah.
And it was, they were excited when we presented that to them, and like the ERA Carroll Realty, they were so excited. Oh, we want to be the major flagship sponsor of this because it all lines up, you know. But yeah, it was good for us. But when they wrote their swan song when they decided to boycott, that was the stupidest thing ever.
Yeah, instant lawsuit.
It was over. It was just starting to get a breath, and it was just a bullet in the head. And but the WCRA basically is the same plan moving on. It's quiet. I don't know what all. Sometimes I thought maybe I should have tried to stay in closer touch with that, just out of curiosity to see how it's going. But I know it's still going. Mm-hmm. But the ERA was a very personal thing for me. I had put so much time and effort into that. And I was so excited when our committee, and it wasn't just a given. I mean, it took some convincing and to do it, and it worked for us. It worked. And I don't think any of the others were very successful at all. But
I don't think so either. But we went to all of them, except for yours, of course. But what I saw instantly at the first one was these people have taken the same problems they have with the PRCA with them to this new
format, whatever.
You can't call it an association, but that's what it was. And that's why it would not function. And I asked Hunter Cure one time after the ERA deal, because I got to know him doing that. Well, why did you do that? I mean, those guys that went and did that, like Trevor spent and forfeited a fortune.
A lot.
To put himself on the line to make something work, to make it change. And I asked Hunter, why did you do that? I mean, things were good with the PRCA. And he said, because I hope that someday it will bring about change. And that's what I've always respected about all of that.
Yeah.
Is everybody, us included. I mean, we went and did that stuff to try to create change. And you know what it did?
I think it's
nothing.
No. In fact, it might have helped re-cement some of the stuff, because then they could say, well, see, we told you that wasn't going to work.
Yeah.
That it was the same old, but now they had another argument. And I don't know. I think there were a lot of things right as far as concepts in there. You got to connect with the people.
Yeah.
You've got to connect with the people. And they were on the ground for an hour and a half to 2 hours beforehand, come in, and there were people lined up to get autographs, and they could figure out that these were people.
Yeah.
And I always used this, I guess it was kind of a foolish argument, but one of my arguments was always the reason NASCAR works is because every freaking redneck in there thinks that Tony Stewart wants to eat chicken at their house. And
it's true.
But that's what they believe. Mm-hmm. And you go to those races, Wade, it was an eye-opener. There'd be a guy, those tickets weren't cheap. They were like $350 for like tickets to get into all 3 days things, okay? Here'd come some outfit from Pennsylvania. These people didn't have their wife and a scrawny husband and 3 or 4 little snot-nosed kids.
You some bitches got 50 cents?
Exactly. And I should be careful with what I'm doing here. But these people didn't have a pot or a window.
Yeah.
But they had scraped up enough money to come from Pennsylvania to Las Vegas to get to this race. Mm-hmm. And you would listen to them. They're going to 3 more, too.
Yeah.
They're going to be in Dallas. They're going to be in Bristol. They're going to be in, I don't know the names of all of them. But these people are passionate fans. And they live, die, and breathe this stuff. And they've got, like, the merchandise. Well, it's no different than going to the finals. You can buy a coat, $500 coat. Mm-hmm. It's got all the stuff on it,
to look like a contestant.
Yeah. And then you can buy these little cast iron cars that they're nice looking little cars, probably about that big, about that long, about that high. And you can get those this is 20 years ago, for $50 or $60 a piece.
Yeah.
$50 or $60 could buy some things. Mm-hmm. These people have 2 or 3 of those under each arm, and the coats. They didn't just come to spend the money on the trip and the tickets. They were all in on it was phenomenal for me to sit there with what little production experience I had from our event and watch this thing happen and understand that there's no limit to what people will do if you can get a hold of them, but you've got to make the connection between the player and the spectator. And that's what we have never done.
Yeah.
And we've never tried. We've never made any attempt to do it. Some of these people that are a little better at branding and so on and so forth, seem to be making some inroads there. But, and again, the way our event is structured, it doesn't really lend itself to that too much. But we tried in Sheridan for a couple of years when we first went back to back. Not the first year, but the second and third year. Thought, okay, there's an opportunity here. So we know who's going to be here, and we know, and that was when they were saying you can select a few that are going to go to the perf.
You can feature contestants to be in your performance.
So let's take advantage of this, and let's talk to these contestants well ahead of time, and say we would like you to spend an hour and a half at Hammer Chevrolet that afternoon after Slack. They can promote it ahead of time because we know you're going to be here. And you can go and they'll buy a nice lunch. You'll be in an air-conditioned room and just sign some autographs, Hug some fat ladies and kiss some babies and do whatever it is that we got to do. No. $500. You're here. Can't you do that? Can't you make that investment of your own time as an investment in the future of our sport and to make a connection? No, won't do it.
Yeah. And I think, without getting completely sidetracked, people doing stuff for free in rodeo is one of the biggest problems with rodeo. I truly believe that.
Right.
But now there is people that are starting to understand that their name is their brand. Rocker
Yes,
gets it.
he
Rocker
does.
is the best at it.
He does.
He gets it. It's not a $500 fee. It's going to lead to something bigger than that down the road. And if you're doing it for, I hate asking people to do stuff for free. By the way, I'm not paying you to come up here.
No.
But if you're doing if you're doing it for a rodeo committee, you're getting paid to do that. That's a little bit different situation, but
that's kind of the way I saw it. But it wasn't received that way.
Yes, but I do think that rodeo contestants are starting to understand that they're building their own brand, which helps the world.
You look at the endorsement opportunities, and this is what we tried to press when we were talking to them when we were talking about the ERA. You guys, it's huge. Mm-hmm. Why shouldn't there be in every Western Supply and Tractor Supply and all these little toy trucks and trailers that have Trevor Brazil on the side of them and have whatever? They don't know who the hell you are.
Yeah.
But there's countless opportunities at all different levels if you can just make a connection.
Yeah. And another great example is J.B. Mooney. He's probably the most famous person in rodeo next to Dale Brisby. And when he rodeoed, he came to Dillon, Montana. He fell off. Shane Proctor won the bull riding. JB fell off. He stood back there for an hour, Dillon, Montana, signing autographs because he gets it. And look at where he's at.
Yeah. And I will tell you this, there was a definite division between the rough stock boys and the timed eventers. Mm-hmm. Those kids, the rough stock kids, hell, I'll sign autographs. We try to set up a table after the perf or something somewhere. They'd be there.
Yeah.
Now, unless they had to get 5 of them crammed into that Buick to get to the next one, and they had one hot dog to split between them, and it's just. But if they just had a chance, if they could just make some money, which they could do in the tier system, they'd get there eventually. But they were willing. Time inventors, hell no, no, but hell no, not gonna do it. And it's too bad because there's a ton of potential there. And when I was working on the plan that ended up being the ERA plan, I talked to a lot of people in different sports, like racing and anybody I could talk to, football, golf. And I talked to a guy that was big in Formula One racing. And he said, I will tell you, you people just frustrate us to no end. He said, you've got everything. We've got cars that go, He said, you got it all, and you don't do a goddamn thing with it. He said, and he made this point, and I've never forgotten it. He said, there's not a kid alive, at least for us in our generation, that did not at one time want to be a cowboy. There's not one. And it's boys, girls, it doesn't matter. Everybody wanted to be a cowboy. You see how many people wanted to be a race car driver? Maybe one in every 5,000 or something. He said, that's not what people dreamt of. It's part of the American way.
Yeah.
And he said they want to be a cowboy, and you won't do anything to try to help them even be one for a day. What's wrong with you guys? And so you got to ask the same question. What's wrong with us? Why don't we figure this out?
Well,
And
sorry, go ahead.
no, it's just, it's so frustrating to me that you get so much resistance from people that, my God, I'm a cowboy. I'm not going to sign an autograph. I'm not
Yeah.
going to. I mean, no, guys.
Well, I think everybody takes the easy way out. And we've all identified the problem. You just identified the problem. It's nothing new. It's the same conversation that Ike had in Oklahoma City in the 70s. But here we are. What's the fix? I mean, how do we fix it, and how do we follow through with it?
I don't know.
That's the issue.
I'm not very smart, and I've tried everything I knew, and all I've done along the way, really, to be honest with you, is pissed a lot of people off and made a bunch of enemies, but never accomplished anything. And that wasn't the goal. I didn't set out to do that, but that's what I got done. God, they used to just wince when I'd show up at the damn convention. And I told, one time I cornered John and Carl and might have been Keith.
John
Davis.
Okay.
And they were standing down at the bottom of that escalator. It was over with. And they were standing down there, and I came down the escalator and I said, gentlemen, I said, I don't come here to piss you off. That's not what I didn't come here to do that. But we have got to talk about these things. Somebody's got to bring it up, because it just sits here and just goes on and on and on and on forever. And if we don't start talking about it, we're never going to get anywhere. But they didn't want to hear it. And again, I don't think it's the right place. I don't think that's the atmosphere. It's a party time. We're celebrating. It's our World Series, our Super Bowl. It's the culmination of the year's season, and it's all up, and that's good. But there has to be a time and a place where we can not bellyache, but get together constructively, pre-select a couple of topics so you've got time to prepare your thoughts and your ideas and suggestions, and deal with them on a positive level with the intent of coming, if we don't come up with a solution, we come up with the first 2 or 3 steps towards a solution for that particular issue. And we just keep at it till we get it checked. Can't win the war, but we're going to chisel away, and we're going to get one battle at a time till we start to win the war. But they didn't want to hear that either. I mean, I don't think there's another way. I think everybody's got to have a seat at the table. Instead of, well, you've got 2 representatives. In my mind, that doesn't work. That's not good enough. They're trying to represent, so you've got this guy that represents this, you get three people there for 3 different sizes of rodeos against the rest of the board. No, it'll never work.
Yeah.
So we've got to somehow be able to sit down collectively and understand each other's situation, because I'm sure we're guilty of not understanding everything from that side either. Because you tend to develop blinders after a while. As much as you think you can see the whole thing, I don't think we see it.
Yeah.
We see it from our perspective. And that's what we're all doing. We're seeing and judging from our perspective instead of the collective perspective where we need to be. And I don't know. Sometimes I think, God, I'm so tired. I don't want to fight the fight. And it shouldn't be a fight. That's the thing that's so frustrating. I don't think it should have to be a fight.
Yeah.
It should be a collective desire to improve and grow. And is it going to hurt? How pain-free has the growth periods you guys have been through been? None of them pain-free.
Yeah, I'll let you know when we're done.
Yeah. But I mean...
But it's also the reward.
It is. It's those of us that are... We live in a risk reward society. Can't say we reward, but I can think it. It's a hard word for me. Reward is just awful. Anyway, but as business people, you make a decision, okay, we're going to have to hang ourselves out here. You know, we're going to borrow some money. We're going to stake some things that we could lose here on this, but we think this is what we need to do to get to here. You're all doing the same thing. Even people that work for wages in a way, they're doing it too, just on a much lower level. But that's the capitalistic. That's what drives us. That's what drives everything. And even the people that work for wages, that without somebody being driven like that, they don't have a place to work. And so that drives everything. And is it perfect? No, but it works pretty well. And people from all different levels have been able to profit because of that system. So let's profit not just monetarily, but let's profit with growth and
reward.
Yeah. Let's see what we can make out of this bugger.
Yeah.
Because I think we can make something grand. And I think we need to kind of get on the stick because they're coming after us. And in places they're starting to get a foothold. And that's why I think it's so important that art can embrace all of rodeo. So that because it's got a much wider footprint than we want to think. I mean, there's rodeo in New Jersey. We don't know about it, but it's there. But if those people are contacting their Congress people, and we've got people in all 50 states doing it, it's better than what we got now.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's important. Those are the two things I want to try to do. To somehow influence, maybe is a better word than accomplish. I'd like to see them accomplished, and if I could somehow try to influence a shift in direction or at least get a ball rolling.
Or complete the steps.
I'd be really tickled. I think they're important steps.
Yeah.
And I love the industry. It's been a huge part of my life for a long time. And I don't think you just walk away. Not when it's been that big of a deal for you, you know. And never as a contestant. I tried, but I was a total failure at that, you know, and was able to recognize it. But I put a lot of money in a lot of people's pockets over the years. So I did my part.
Exactly.
Yeah. You know, my friend Larry Gold asked one time, we were down in Wickenburg and we were headed somewhere and we were crossing a bridge. He said, "You want to stop and throw $300 in the creek or you want a rope?" And I said, "No, I just rope." At least. But I mean,
people depend on us.
They do.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. That's we losers got to show up, you know. But I've had a great life, and I've had a great life. I grew up in the West. I grew up with the values that we all have and cherish and that the world's hungry for. And can we do something to help spread that and impart it and share it with more people and get it started in places where they need it so freaking bad?
Yeah.
It's the division, the silly division that has now become, people talk, and they talk about death to their the people that don't agree with him. No, we don't. We're not supposed to agree. From disagreement comes all progress. That's my own thing. But Wade, if nobody ever disagreed, we'd still eating whatever we found dead and rotten. At some point, somebody said, we can push them off a cliff. And the other guy said, no, somebody's going to die. And they said, yeah, somebody's going to die. But we're going to eat fresh meat. Might be a little bruised, but it's going to be fresh. Mm-hmm. And they figured out, they lost some people. I'm sure they lost a bunch figuring it out. But it evolved. But there was a big argument at the front end of that, I'll guarantee you. And so it evolved. It evolved. It all comes from disagreement. We're supposed to disagree.
Yeah.
That's part of who we are and how we grow is because we disagree. I can't hate you because I don't agree with you. Try to convince you that I'm right, and you're going to try to convince me that you're right. That's the debate process. And from that, somewhere comes a compromise, and that's how we take steps forward. And that's what we're looking for, what we've been talking about. How do we get that process started? We have to all get sat down at the table. And we can't do it if we're at two different tables. About all I got to say on that.
Yeah. I was going to ask you a few more questions, but I think that's probably a pretty good place to stop.
We could do it again sometime.
Can't get more philosophical than that.
No, you can't really. This is deep stuff.
Yep.
Yeah. Right up there with Socrates and some of those guys.
Yeah. Well, thanks for coming.
Thanks for asking.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry it took me so long to get here, but I kept, I'm old enough now. I don't remember things. Like, you called me, a couple months ago or 3 months ago and said I was leaving town. You said, well, call me when you get back. Sure. I forgot. Can't remember anything. Wait, I'm too old. Pretty soon I'll forget these things I want to try to do, and then everybody will be at peace because I'll just shut up and be like a toadstool in the corner.
Well, it's on a podcast. You can listen to it again later.
Remind myself.
Yeah.
Anyway,
right.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Billy.